When CEO Victoria Hale walked into that blind date with a torn dress, she had no idea the blue-collar contractor waiting inside would save her from losing everything. This is the story of a billion-dollar executive whose empire crumbled overnight, and the single father who offered her something money couldn't buy, a second chance. Stay until the end to see how their impossible love story changed both their lives forever. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Daniel Hayes' kitchen flickered as he stared at the stack of past due invoices scattered across the table. It was nearly midnight and the house was finally quiet. Lily had fallen asleep 2 hours ago, her math homework still spread across her bedroom floor, where they'd worked through multiplication tables together. Daniel rubbed his eyes and reached for the cold coffee sitting next to his calculator. 34 years old, and this was his life now. Early mornings hauling lumber, afternoons on job sites covered in sawdust and paint, evenings helping with homework, and nights like this one trying to make the numbers add up. His phone buzzed. Marcus again. "Stop ignoring me," the text read. "One dinner. That's all I'm asking." Daniel sighed and typed back, "I don't have time for this." The response came immediately. "You don't have time to be happy? Come on, man. One blind date. She's cool, I promise." Marcus Chen had been Daniel's best friend since high school. They'd worked construction together before Marcus left to become an electrician. Now Marcus was married with twins, living what looked like a normal life, the kind Daniel had once imagined for himself before everything fell apart. That was 7 years ago. Back when Daniel's ex-wife, Jennifer, was still around. Back before she decided that being married to a contractor with big dreams but small paychecks wasn't the life she wanted. Back before she left Nashville and Lily without looking back. Daniel had raised his daughter alone ever since, and honestly, he'd gotten used to it. The rhythm of their life together felt solid, predictable, safe. Dating wasn't part of that rhythm anymore. "I'm serious, Marcus," Daniel typed. "I can't." But Marcus was relentless. Over the next 3 days, the messages kept coming. Screenshots of the woman's professional photo, elegant, confident, successful looking. Articles about her company, even a damn TED Talk she'd given about leadership. "She just moved to Nashville, Sharkin," Marcus insisted during a phone call. "She doesn't know anyone. My wife works at her company. Just meet her once. What's the worst that could happen?" Daniel finally caved on Thursday night, standing in Lily's doorway after tucking her in. "Dad?" she asked sleepily. "Who are you talking to?" "Uncle Marcus. He wants you to go on a date, doesn't he?" Daniel blinked. "How did you—" "I heard you talking last week." Lily propped herself up on one elbow, suddenly more awake. "You should go." "Sweetheart, I don't need—" "Dad." Her voice carried that particular blend of wisdom and stubbornness that always caught him off guard. 8 years old, but sometimes she sounded 30. "You're always here. You never do anything fun." I have fun with you." "That's different." She flopped back onto her pillow. "I'm your daughter. You're supposed to be here. But you should also have, I don't know, a life?" Daniel smiled despite himself. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just don't listen." So on Friday evening, Daniel found himself texting Marcus a reluctant, "Fine. One date. That's it." The reply was instantaneous. "Yes, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, the Junction, downtown." Saturday came faster than Daniel wanted. He dropped Lily off at Marcus's house around 5:30, enduring his friend's knowing grin and his wife Sarah's enthusiastic thumbs up as Lily disappeared inside to play with the twins. "Relax," Marcus said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Just be yourself." "That's what I'm worried about," Daniel muttered. He drove home, showered, and stood in front of his closet trying to figure out what to wear. His wardrobe consisted mostly of work clothes, jeans, flannel shirts, steel-toed boots. He owned exactly one button-down shirt, purchased 3 years ago for a funeral. After 15 minutes of internal debate, he settled on his cleanest pair of jeans and a dark blue flannel that didn't have any paint stains. Good enough. The Junction was a small, cozy restaurant tucked between 2 larger buildings on 4th Avenue. Daniel had driven past it 100 times, but never been inside. It had that comfortable, low-key atmosphere that felt completely opposite to the trendy spots that kept popping up around Nashville. He arrived at 6:45, early enough to feel awkward, but too anxious to wait in his truck. The hostess led him to a table by the window. Daniel sat down, ordered water, and immediately regretted every decision that had led to this moment. What was he supposed to say to a CEO? What did they even have in common? Marcus had mentioned she ran some tech company, which meant she probably spent her days in boardrooms making decisions that affected thousands of people. Meanwhile, Daniel spent his days replacing rotted deck boards and unclogging kitchen sinks. This was a mistake. He checked his phone. 6:52. Maybe she wouldn't show. Maybe this was some elaborate setup and Marcus was watching from across the street, laughing at him. Maybe... The door swung open. A woman rushed inside and Daniel's breath caught. She was striking, not in the polished magazine cover way he'd expected, but in a raw, completely human way that made his chest tighten. Dark hair pulled back in a style that had clearly started the day neat, but was now falling apart. Sharp, intelligent eyes that darted around the restaurant before landing on him. And a blue dress that would have been elegant if not for the massive tear running down the right side, exposing her hip and part of her rib cage. She clutched a black purse against the damaged area, her knuckles white with tension. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she walked toward him, each step deliberate, her expression cycling through embarrassment, frustration, and something that looked almost like defiance. Daniel stood automatically, his chair scraping against the floor. "You're Daniel?" she asked. Her voice was controlled but strained, like she was holding something back. "Yeah, and you're Victoria." She stopped at the table, still clutching the purse. "I'm so sorry. I had a terrible day and I didn't have time to change. And honestly, I almost didn't come at all, but Sarah kept texting me and..." She stopped, closing her eyes briefly. "I'm sorry. This isn't how I wanted this to go." Daniel looked at the torn dress, at the way she was standing there trying to maintain some dignity, despite the obvious disaster she was dealing with. Most men would have made a joke, or offered sympathy that felt condescending, or worse, pretended not to notice while clearly staring. Daniel did none of those things. Instead, he said, "Hold on," and walked straight out the front door. Victoria stood frozen, watching through the window as he jogged to a beat-up pickup truck parked across the street. He opened the passenger door, rummaged around in the back, and returned carrying something bundled in his arms. When he came back inside, he held out a clean flannel shirt, red and black checkered, soft from years of washing. "Bathroom's over there," he said quietly, nodding toward the back of the restaurant. "This should cover it. It's clean, I promise. I keep extras in the truck for job sites." Victoria stared at the shirt like it was some kind of alien artifact. "You're giving me your shirt?" "Just borrowing it to you," he offered a small smile. "Unless you'd rather eat dinner holding your purse like that all night." Something shifted in her expression. The defensive walls she'd walked in with, the executive armor she'd worn into 1,000 high-stakes meetings, cracked just slightly. She took the shirt. "Thank you," she said softly. When she disappeared into the bathroom, Daniel sat back down and exhaled slowly. His hands were shaking slightly. He wasn't sure if that was nerves or adrenaline or something else entirely. 5 minutes later, Victoria emerged. The flannel hung oversized on her frame, the sleeves rolled up to her elbows. She'd let her hair down completely, and without the torn dress visible, she looked different, more relaxed, almost vulnerable. She slid into the seat across from him and set her purse aside. "Okay," she said. "Let's start over." Daniel smiled. "Hi, I'm Daniel Hayes. I fix broken things for a living." "Victoria Hale." She extended her hand across the table. "I break things for a living, usually on purpose." They shook hands, and Daniel felt the callous strength in her grip, surprising for someone who looked like she spent all day behind a desk. "So," he said, "want to tell me about your terrible day?" Victoria laughed, sharp and genuine. "You really don't want to hear it. Trust me. Try me." She studied him for a moment, as if deciding whether he was serious. Then she started talking. Plus, the story came out in pieces, woven between ordering drinks and appetizers and the occasional interruption from their server. Victoria had moved to Nashville 6 weeks ago to oversee the expansion of a tech company called Meridian Solutions. They specialized in enterprise software, cloud infrastructure, data analytics, things Daniel only vaguely understood. "I was hired to turn the Nashville branch into the company's primary hub," she explained, tracing the rim of her wine glass with one finger. We're talking about relocating 400 employees, building new facilities, securing contracts with local businesses. It's a massive operation. Sounds stressful. Stressful doesn't even begin to cover it. She took a sip of wine. Today we had a meeting with the city council about zoning permits. Everything was going smoothly until one of the council members started asking questions about our environmental impact assessments, which would have been fine, except our compliance team apparently forgot to file half the paperwork. Daniel winced. That's bad. It gets worse. After the meeting, I get back to the office and find out that our lead investor is threatening to pull funding because they're worried about the timeline. So I spent 4 hours on conference calls trying to convince them that we're still on track, even though we're clearly not. And the dress? Victoria's expression darkened. That happened during the last call. I was pacing my office, stressed out of my mind, and I backed into the corner of my desk. The fabric caught on a drawer handle that was slightly open and just ripped. Ouch. I didn't even notice at first. I finished the call, grabbed my purse, and headed straight here because I was already late. It wasn't until I was getting out of my car that I looked down and realized I was basically indecent. She shook her head. I sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes trying to decide if I should just go home. What made you come inside? Honestly? Victoria met his eyes. I figured if I canceled, Sarah would never let me hear the end of it. And also, I don't know. I've canceled a lot of things lately. Work always comes first. I guess I was tired of that pattern. Daniel nodded slowly. I get that. Do you? Yeah. He leaned back in his chair. After my ex-wife left, I spent 2 years just working, constantly. I convinced myself that if I built the business big enough, successful enough, it would somehow prove that she was wrong about me. That I wasn't just some broke contractor with no future. Did it work? No. Daniel smiled ruefully. I just ended up exhausted and further in debt. Turns out you can't fix a broken marriage by installing kitchen cabinets. Victoria laughed, a real laugh this time, not the polite corporate chuckle she probably used in meetings. So what changed? She asked. Lily, my daughter. Daniel pulled out his phone and showed her a photo, a gap-toothed 8-year-old with wild curly hair and her father's eyes, grinning at the camera while holding up a spelling test marked with a bright red A+. She's beautiful. She's everything. Daniel put the phone away. One night she asked me why I was always tired, and I realized I was doing exactly what Jennifer did, putting everything else ahead of the people who mattered. So I stopped, scaled back the business, focused on jobs I could actually handle, started being present. That must have been hard. Hardest thing I've ever done, but it was worth it. They fell into silence for a moment, the comfortable kind that felt less like an awkward pause and more like a shared breath. The food arrived. Daniel had ordered a burger, Victoria a Caesar salad, and they continued talking. She asked about his business. He explained how he'd started Hayes Home Repair 5 years ago after working for various contractors who treated their crews like disposable labor. I wanted to build something different, he said. A company where people actually gave a damn about the work, where we didn't cut corners or overcharge customers or disappear after the deposit cleared. How's that going? Slowly. Daniel grinned. Turns out integrity doesn't pay the bills as fast as being a scumbag. But I'm making it work. I've got 2 guys who work with me part-time, good people, reliable. We mostly do residential repairs, decks, bathrooms, kitchen renovations, that kind of thing. Do you enjoy it? Most days, yeah. There's something satisfying about fixing something that's broken. Someone calls you because their bathroom floor is rotting through, and a week later they've got a solid floor and a working shower. It's tangible, real. Victoria nodded thoughtfully. I miss that. Miss what? Tangible results. She set down her fork. In tech, everything is abstract. You spend months building infrastructure that nobody sees. Success is measured in uptime percentages and server response times. It's all important, but it doesn't feel real. So why do it? Because I'm good at it. She said it matter-of-factly, without arrogance. I can look at a chaotic organization and see exactly what needs to change. I can manage people, negotiate contracts, solve problems that other executives can't. It's what I've always done. That doesn't answer the question. Victoria paused, her fork hovering over her salad. No, she admitted. I guess it doesn't. Don't. The conversation flowed easier after that. Daniel learned that Victoria had grown up in Chicago, the daughter of two university professors who expected academic excellence. She'd graduated top of her class from MIT, worked at 3 different Fortune 500 companies before turning 40, and had been recruited to Meridian Solutions specifically because of her reputation for turning struggling divisions into profit centers. I've spent the last 15 years climbing, she said. Always the next position, the next challenge, the next opportunity, and now I'm here running the most important project of my career, and I'm wondering what? If any of it actually matters. The vulnerability in that admission hung between them. Daniel didn't offer platitudes or try to fix it. He just nodded, acknowledging the weight of what she'd shared. Can I ask you something? Victoria said after a moment. Sure. Why did you agree to this? The blind date, I mean. You don't seem like someone who needs help meeting people. Daniel laughed. You'd be surprised. Single dad in his 30s? Most women run when they hear about Lily. They either want someone without kids or they're looking for an instant family, and both of those feel wrong. So you just stopped trying. Pretty much. It was easier. He met her eyes. But Marcus kept pushing, said I was using my daughter as an excuse to hide, and maybe he was right. Was he? I don't know yet. Daniel smiled. Ask me after dessert. Victoria returned the smile, and something shifted between them. A subtle recognition, an unspoken understanding that this unlikely dinner was becoming something neither of them had anticipated. They ordered coffee and shared a piece of chocolate cake. Victoria told him about her nightmare apartment hunt, how she'd ended up in a sterile high-rise downtown because she didn't have time to find anything better. Daniel described the house he'd bought 6 years ago, a 1970s fixer-upper in East Nashville that he was slowly renovating one room at a time. It's a disaster, he admitted, but it's mine. Every weekend, Lily and I pick one project. Last month, we repainted her bedroom. This month, we're building shelves for her books. She helps? She insists on it. Kid can use a power drill better than some adults I know. Victoria laughed. I would have loved that growing up. My parents were academics. Everything was theoretical. We never built anything with our hands. You're welcome to come by sometime. I'm sure Lily would love to show off her handiwork. The words came out before Daniel could stop them, casual and unplanned. Victoria's expression flickered, surprise, uncertainty, something that might have been hope. I'd like that, she said quietly. They stayed at the junction until the restaurant started closing down around them. When Daniel walked Victoria to her car, a sleek silver sedan that probably cost more than his truck and his house combined, they stood in the parking lot for a moment, neither quite ready for the night to end. Thank you, Victoria said, still wearing his flannel shirt over her torn dress. For this? For not making tonight weird. You're still wearing my shirt. It's definitely weird. She laughed and started to take it off, but Daniel stopped her. Keep it for now. You can give it back next time. Next time. If you want there to be a next time. Victoria looked at him, really looked, the way she probably analyzed business proposals and strategic plans, assessing, calculating, measuring risk against potential reward. Then she stepped forward and kissed him. It was brief, almost chaste, but it carried the weight of a decision made, a door opened, a possibility acknowledged. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. Next time, she confirmed. Daniel drove home in a daze, his mind replaying every moment of the evening, the way she'd walked in, vulnerable and defensive, the way she'd laughed at his stories about Lily, the way she'd kissed him in the parking lot like she was staking a claim on something she hadn't even known she wanted. He picked up Lily around 10:30 and during Marcus's interrogation while his daughter slept against his shoulder. So? Marcus demanded. How was it? It was good. Good? That's all I get? Daniel smiled. Really good. Are you seeing her again? Yeah, I think so. Marcus pumped his fist in victory. I told you, man. I told you. As Daniel carried Lily to the truck and buckled her into the back seat, he caught his own reflection in the window. For the first time in years, he looked like someone who wasn't just surviving. He looked like someone who might actually be happy. Over the next 3 weeks, Daniel and Victoria fell into an unexpected rhythm. They texted throughout the day, her sending photos of particularly absurd corporate meetings, him sharing pictures of job sites, and Lily's latest school projects. They met for coffee twice during Victoria's lunch breaks, squeezing 30-minute conversations into her packed schedule. On their second official date, Daniel took her to a hole-in-the-wall barbecue place he'd been going to for years. Victoria showed up in jeans and a simple sweater, and the sight of her dressed down felt somehow more intimate than their first dinner. "No torn clothing tonight," she teased as she slid into the booth. "Disappointed?" "A little. I was hoping to raid your wardrobe again." They talked for 3 hours, ignoring the food going cold in front of them. Victoria described the mounting pressure at work. The expansion project was behind schedule, costs were overrunning projections, and the board of directors was starting to ask pointed questions about her leadership. "They hired me to fix this," she said, frustration evident in her voice. "But they won't give me the resources or authority I need to actually do it. Every decision has to be approved by someone in corporate. Every budget line gets questioned. I'm supposed to transform an entire division with one hand tied behind my back. Can you push back? I've tried, but there's this whole political dimension I didn't anticipate. Half the board wants the Nashville expansion to succeed. The other half thinks it's a waste of money and wants to use any setback as ammunition to kill the project. Which means you're caught in the middle." Exactly. Victoria rubbed her temples. "And the worst part is I think they might be right to question it. The timeline was unrealistic from the start. We're trying to build infrastructure that normally takes 2 years and 8 months. It's insane." Daniel listened, asking questions when appropriate, but mostly just giving her space to vent. When she finally wound down, she looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, I've been complaining this entire time. You didn't sign up to be my therapist." "I signed up to get to know you," Daniel said simply. "This is part of who you are." Something in Victoria's expression softened. "Your turn," she said. "What's going on in your world?" So Daniel told her about the bathroom renovation he was working on, a job that had started as a simple shower repair and spiraled into a full gut and rebuild when they discovered extensive water damage behind the walls. "The homeowner keeps changing their mind about finishes," he explained. "First they wanted basic tile, then they saw something on Pinterest and wanted marble, then they realized marble was expensive and wanted to go back to tile, but now they're thinking maybe we should do one of those modern walk-in showers." "How do you handle that?" "Patience and very clear contracts." Daniel grinned. "But honestly, I get it. It's their home. They want it to be perfect. My job is to help them figure out what perfect actually means." "You're good at that." "At what?" "Meeting people where they are. Not judging them for being indecisive or messy or human." Daniel shrugged. "Everyone's fighting their own battles. Might as well be kind about it." Victoria reached across the table and took his hand, her thumb tracing slow circles over his knuckles. They stayed like that for a long moment, the noise of the restaurant fading into background static. The third date was different. Daniel invited Victoria to his house on a Saturday afternoon, warning her in advance that Lily would be there. "I want you to meet her," he'd said over the phone, "but only if you're comfortable with that. No pressure." Victoria had been quiet for a moment before responding. "I'd love to meet her." She arrived at 2 o'clock, parking her sedan behind Daniel's truck in the driveway. The house was exactly what he'd described. A modest ranch-style home with blue siding, a front porch that sagged slightly on one side, and a yard that needed mowing. Daniel met her at the door wearing jeans and a t-shirt splattered with what looked like primer. "Fair warning," he said. "We're in the middle of a project." He led her through the living room, comfortable but cluttered with a mix of furniture that didn't quite match, and into the kitchen, where Lily stood on a step stool at the counter, carefully painting a wooden shelf bracket. She looked up when they entered, her eyes widening slightly. "You're Victoria," she said, "and you're Lily." Victoria smiled. "Your dad's told me a lot about you." "He talks about you too." Lily set down her paintbrush with impressive care for an 8-year-old. "He gets all smiley when you text him." "Lily," Daniel said, mortified. "What? You do?" Victoria laughed, and the sound seemed to break whatever tension had been building. She walked over to inspect Lily's work. "These look great. Are you helping build the shelves?" "Dad's building them. I'm doing the painting." Lily gestured proudly at several completed brackets laid out on newspaper to dry. We're making a bookshelf for my room. I gotta pick the color. Purple? Lavender, Lily corrected seriously. There's a difference. My mistake. For the next hour, Victoria found herself absorbed into the easy chaos of their Saturday project. Daniel worked in the garage, cutting boards and assembling the shelf frame, while Lily provided commentary and occasional assistance. Victoria, after asking if she could help, was put in charge of quality control, checking Lily's painting for drips and missed spots. It was so completely different from Victoria's normal life that she felt almost disoriented. No emails, no conference calls, no strategic planning or crisis management, just the simple, methodical work of building something with your hands while an 8-year-old chattered about her favorite books and her best friend Emma and the science fair project she was planning. When the shelves were finally assembled and the paint had dried enough to mount them, all three of them trooped into Lily's bedroom. Daniel drilled the supports into the wall while Lily supervised, occasionally offering suggestions like, maybe a little to the left, and is it straight? It doesn't look straight. Victoria stood back, watching them work together with a practiced ease that spoke of hundreds of similar projects. When the shelf was finally mounted and level, Lily began arranging her books with careful deliberation, organizing them by color in a rainbow pattern that probably violated every library science principle but looked beautiful. Perfect, she declared when she was done. Daniel ruffled her hair. You did good work, kiddo. We all did. Lily turned to Victoria. Thanks for helping. Thanks for letting me crash your Saturday, Victoria replied. Later, after Lily had been bribed with pizza and a movie and was settled in the living room, Daniel and Victoria sat on the back porch, drinking beer and watching the sun set. She's wonderful, Victoria said quietly. Yeah, she is. You're lucky. I know. Daniel took a sip of his beer. You okay? I know this is probably weird for you. It is weird, Victoria admitted, but good weird. I can't remember the last time I spent an afternoon just building something, not strategizing or optimizing or managing, just making something with my hands. That's my whole life. I know, and I'm starting to understand why you love it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the cicadas beginning their evening chorus. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Always. Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life instead of something bigger? Daniel considered the question carefully. Sometimes, he said honestly, when the truck breaks down or a client doesn't pay on time, or I'm lying awake at 3 a.m. trying to figure out how to cover Lily's dental bills. In those moments, yeah, I wonder what life would be like if I'd made different choices. But then I wake up and make pancakes with my daughter, or I finish a job and see how happy the homeowner is. Or I have days like today where the work is simple and the company is good and everything just feels right. He looked at Victoria. I think there's different kinds of success. Mine doesn't look like yours, but that doesn't make it less valuable. Victoria nodded slowly. I used to think success meant climbing higher. Corner office, bigger salary, more responsibility. But lately I'm wondering if I've been climbing the wrong mountain. What would the right mountain look like? I don't know yet. She turned to face him. But maybe it looks something like this. Daniel kissed her then, soft and unhurried, tasting like cheap beer and possibility. When they pulled apart, Victoria was smiling. I should go, she said reluctantly. Early morning tomorrow. Always working. Always working, she agreed. But she didn't move to leave just yet. They sat there on the porch as the sky darkened, neither of them quite ready to let the day end, both of them beginning to understand that something rare and unexpected was growing between them, something that might actually matter, something worth protecting. The first crack appeared on a Wednesday morning in late October. Victoria was sitting in her office on the 14th floor of the Meridian Solutions building, staring at a spreadsheet that refused to make sense, no matter how many times she recalculated the numbers. The Nashville expansion project was bleeding money faster than anyone had anticipated, and the quarterly review meeting with the board of directors was 3 days away. Her phone buzzed with the text from Daniel. Lunch today? There's a taco truck near your building that Lily says I need to try. Victoria smiled despite the knot of anxiety in her stomach. They'd been seeing each other for 6 weeks now, and somehow Daniel had become the only part of her life that didn't feel like it was slowly collapsing. She was typing a response when her office door opened without warning. Richard Pemberton, the chief financial officer, walked in carrying a leather portfolio and an expression that Victoria had learned to dread. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door behind him. Victoria set down her phone. "Good morning to you too, Richard." The board received the preliminary cost analysis for the expansion. He opened the portfolio and slid a document across her desk. "We're 43% over budget with only 30% of the infrastructure complete. Care to explain how that happened?" Victoria had been expecting this conversation, but the bluntness still stung. "The initial budget was unrealistic," she said evenly. "We discussed this when I took the position. Building this kind of infrastructure in 8 months requires premium pricing on materials, overtime labor, and expedited permits, all of which cost more than standard timelines. You assured us you could manage within the allocated resources. I said I would do my best. I didn't promise miracles." Richard leaned against the edge of her desk, his expression cold. "The board is losing confidence, Victoria. Half of them wanted to hire someone else from the beginning. I convinced them you were worth the risk. Don't make me regret that." "Is that a threat?" "It's a reality check." He straightened, gathering the portfolio. "You have until Monday's meeting to present a revised plan that brings us back under budget. Otherwise, I can't protect you anymore." He left without waiting for a response. Victoria sat alone in her office, the spreadsheet still glowing on her screen, and felt the familiar pressure building behind her ribs. The same pressure that had driven her through M1T, through a decade of corporate politics, through every impossible challenge she'd ever faced. The pressure that was starting to feel less like motivation and more like drowning. Her phone buzzed again. "Daniel. You didn't answer. Everything okay?" She stared at the message for a long moment before typing, "Rain check on lunch? Swamped today." The response came immediately. "No problem. Dinner instead? I'm making spaghetti. Lily wants to show you her Halloween costume." Victoria felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking exactly, but shifting, a hairline fracture in the armor she'd spent years building. "I'll be there at 7, she typed. Then she turned back to the spreadsheet and got to work. Over the next 2 weeks, Victoria threw herself into saving the expansion project with an intensity that bordered on obsession. She arrived at the office before sunrise and left after midnight. She renegotiated contracts with suppliers, restructured the project timeline, and personally reviewed every line item in the budget, looking for cuts that wouldn't compromise quality. Her relationship with Daniel became collateral damage. Canceled dinners, shortened phone calls, text messages that went unanswered for hours. She knew she was pulling away, knew Daniel could feel the distance growing between them, but she couldn't stop. This was who she was. This was what she did. When the pressure mounted, Victoria Hale delivered results, no matter the personal cost. Daniel, to his credit, didn't push. He sent occasional texts, photos of Lily, funny anecdotes from job sites, simple reminders that he was thinking of her. But he didn't demand explanations or complain about her absence, which somehow made Victoria feel worse. On the Thursday before the board meeting, she was working in her office at 9 p.m. when her phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. She almost didn't answer. "Hey," she said, her voice hoarse from hours of conference calls. "Hey yourself." Daniel's voice was warm but cautious. "You sound exhausted." "I am exhausted." "When's the last time you ate?" Victoria looked at the empty coffee cups scattered across her desk. "Does coffee count?" "No, it doesn't count." She heard rustling on his end of the line. "I'm bringing you food. What's your office address?" "Daniel, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." "Address?" Victoria closed her eyes, feeling the fracture in her chest widen just a little. 4th and Commerce. Meridian Solutions Building, 14th floor. "Be there in 30 minutes. He hung up before she could protest further. Victoria sat in the sudden silence of her office, surrounded by the evidence of her unraveling project, and realized she was crying. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears that slipped down her cheeks and dripped onto the keyboard. She wiped them away quickly, angrily, hating the vulnerability and the weakness and the fact that she'd let someone get close enough to see her like this. 28 minutes later, there was a knock on her office door. Daniel stood in the hallway holding 2 paper bags and wearing his usual flannel shirt and jeans, looking completely out of place in the sterile corporate environment. Security tried to stop me, he said, walking in without waiting for an invitation. Had to tell them I was delivering dinner to the CEO. Pretty sure they thought I was lying. You kind of were. Technically, I'm delivering dinner to a CEO. He set the bags on her desk, pushing aside spreadsheets and reports to make room. Close enough. He'd brought Chinese food, fried rice, orange chicken, vegetable lo mein, spring rolls. Enough for 3 people, all of it still hot. I didn't know what you liked, he explained, unpacking containers, so I got everything. Victoria stared at the food, then at Daniel, then back at the food. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Because you're running yourself into the ground and someone needs to make sure you eat. He held out a pair of chopsticks. Come on, take a break. The spreadsheets will still be here in 20 minutes. They ate sitting on the floor of her office, leaning against the wall beneath the window that overlooked the Nashville skyline. Victoria hadn't realized how hungry she was until she started eating. She consumed the orange chicken in what felt like seconds, then moved on to the fried rice while Daniel watched with amusement. When did you last eat? He asked again. Yesterday? Maybe. I don't remember. Victoria. I know. She set down the container. I'm not trying to be self-destructive. There's so much to do, and I'm the only one who can do it, and if I don't fix this, everything falls apart. Daniel was quiet for a moment, chewing thoughtfully. Can I tell you something? He finally said. Sure. That's bullshit. Victoria blinked. Excuse me? The idea that you're the only one who can fix this, that if you don't sacrifice yourself, everything collapses, it's bullshit. He set down his own food and turned to face her. I used to think the same way. After Jennifer left, I convinced myself that I had to do everything alone. Be both parents, run the business, never ask for help because asking for help meant admitting weakness. What changed? I broke. Daniel said it simply, without shame. Had a panic attack on a job site about 3 years ago. Complete meltdown in front of my crew and the homeowner. Thought I was having a heart attack. Ended up in the emergency room getting told it was anxiety. Victoria had stopped eating, her attention completely focused on him. The ER doctor asked me when I'd last taken a day off, Daniel continued, and I realized I couldn't remember. So I started making changes, hired a part-time bookkeeper to handle invoices, started saying no to jobs I couldn't handle, asked Marcus to watch Lily when I needed a break instead of pretending I could do everything myself. Did it help? Saved my life. He met her eyes. You can't pour from an empty cup, Victoria. And right now, you're running on fumes. I don't have a choice. The board meeting is Monday. If I don't present a viable plan, they'll replace me. So let them. Victoria stared at him. What? Let them replace you. Walk away. Find something that doesn't require you to destroy yourself. I can't just quit. Why not? Because... Victoria struggled to find words. Because I don't quit. I don't fail. That's not who I am. Maybe it should be. Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. Failing at something that's destroying you isn't weakness. It's survival. The words hung between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Victoria wanted to argue, to explain all the reasons why he was wrong, why she couldn't just walk away from the biggest project of her career. But the tears were coming back, and this time she couldn't stop them. Daniel pulled her against his chest without a word, one hand stroking her hair while she cried into his flannel shirt. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. Well, what if they're right? What if I'm not good enough? Then they're idiots. He kissed the top of her head. You're the smartest, most capable person I've ever met. If this project is failing, it's not because of you. It's because they set you up to fail. Victoria pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes. You don't know that. I know that any company willing to lose someone like you over budget overruns doesn't deserve to keep you. They sat together on the floor of her office until the food went cold, talking about everything and nothing. Daniel told her about the deck he was building for an elderly couple in Sylvan Park. Victoria described the impossible politics of corporate boardrooms. They argued about whether pineapple belonged on pizza and agreed that Nashville traffic was somehow getting worse every month. For 2 hours, Victoria forgot about the spreadsheets and the board meeting and the expanding project that was consuming her life. For 2 hours, she just existed as a person rather than a position. It was nearly midnight when Daniel finally stood and started gathering the empty food containers. "Come home with me," he said. Victoria looked up at him. "What?" "You're exhausted, you're stressed, and if I leave you here, you're going to work until dawn and make yourself sick." He extended his hand. "Come stay at my place tonight, get some sleep. Lily would love to see you." "Daniel, I can't. I have too much. The work will still be here tomorrow, but you won't be any good to anyone if you collapse." His hand remained extended. "Please." Victoria looked at the spreadsheets covering her desk, the reports waiting for review, the emails multiplying in her inbox. Then she looked at Daniel's hand, steady and sure, and offering something she hadn't realized she desperately needed. She took it. They drove separately to Daniel's house, Victoria following his truck through the quiet Nashville streets. The porch light was on when they arrived, and through the front window Victoria could see the warm glow of the living room lamp. It looked like a postcard of domestic normalcy, so far removed from her sterile high-rise apartment that it might as well have been another planet. "Marcus is watching Lily," Daniel explained as they walked inside. "They're probably still up watching movies." But the house was quiet, and when Daniel checked Lily's room, she was fast asleep, sprawled across her bed in her purple pajamas, with a book still open beside her. "Out cold," he reported, gently closing the door. Marcus must have left already. Victoria stood in the hallway, suddenly aware of how intimate this was. She'd been to Daniel's house before, but always during the day, always with Lily present. Being here at night felt different, more vulnerable. "You can sleep in my room," Daniel said, reading her hesitation. "I'll take the couch." "Daniel, or we can both sleep in my room like adults who trust each other." He smiled slightly. "Your choice." Victoria followed him upstairs. His bedroom was exactly what she'd expected, simple and practical. A queen-size bed with a faded blue comforter, a dresser covered with loose change and work receipts. Framed photos of Lily at various ages covering one wall. Daniel lent her an oversized t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants that she had to roll up 3 times. She washed her face in his bathroom, borrowed his toothbrush without asking, and climbed into bed feeling completely disoriented by the normality of it all. Daniel slid in beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly in the darkness. "For what?" "For not letting me disappear into my work. For showing up when I needed someone even though I didn't ask." "That's what people do when they care about each other." He reached over and took her hand. "You don't have to earn my support, Victoria. It's not conditional on you being perfect or successful or anything else. It just is." Victoria squeezed his hand, unable to find words for the emotion swelling in her chest. They fell asleep like that, fingers intertwined, 2 people from completely different worlds finding unexpected comfort in each other's presence. Victoria woke once during the night, disoriented by the unfamiliar room and the warm body beside her. For a moment she panicked, her mind immediately jumping to all the work waiting at the office, all the problems she wasn't solving. Then Daniel's arm tightened around her waist, pulling her closer, and she let herself relax back into sleep. Morning came too early. Victoria woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was, couldn't reconcile the comfortable bed and the domestic sounds with her usual routine of alarm clocks in empty apartments. Then she heard Lily's voice floating up from the kitchen. "Is Victoria still sleeping? Can I wake her up?" "Let her rest, kiddo. She had a long night." "But I want to show her my new book." Victoria smiled and sat up, running her hands through her tangled hair. She looked like hell, yesterday's makeup smudged, wearing Daniel's enormous clothes, her professional facade completely stripped away. It should have felt vulnerable and uncomfortable. Instead, it felt oddly liberating. She found one of Daniel's hoodies hanging on the back of the door and pulled it on before heading downstairs. Lily spotted her first, her face lighting up with pure delight. "Victoria, you're here! Dad said you stayed over." "Good morning to you too." Victoria accepted the enthusiastic hug from the 8-year-old. Daniel turned from the stove where he was flipping pancakes, a smile crossing his face when he saw her. "Morning. Coffee's ready." Victoria poured herself a cup and sat at the kitchen table, watching Daniel and Lily move around each other with practiced choreography. Lily set the table while providing running commentary about everything from the weather to her best friend Emma's new puppy. Daniel cooked while occasionally interjecting with questions or gentle corrections. It was so normal, so completely ordinary, and Victoria felt like an anthropologist observing a foreign culture. "Do you like blueberry pancakes?" Lily asked, appearing at Victoria's elbow. "Dad makes the best ones. He puts the blueberries in smiley faces. I love blueberry pancakes." "Good, because he's making a lot." Breakfast was chaotic in the way that meals with children always are. Lily talked nonstop, bouncing between topics with no apparent logic. Daniel refereed occasional disputes about appropriate amounts of syrup. Victoria found herself laughing at stories about Lily's third-grade classroom politics and her ongoing feud with a boy named Tyler who kept stealing her erasers. "Tyler sounds like trouble," Victoria observed. "Tyler's annoying," Lily declared with the absolute certainty of an 8-year-old. "But Emma says he only bothers me because he likes me, which is stupid, because if you like someone, you should be nice to them, not annoying." "That's actually very wise," Victoria said. "I know." Lily took an enormous bite of pancake. "I'm very smart." After breakfast, Daniel had to head to a job site in Green Hills. Lily was supposed to go to Marcus and Sarah's house for the day, but she staged a minor revolt. "Can Victoria stay with me instead?" she asked hopefully. "We could do something fun." "Victoria has to work, sweetie," Daniel said gently. "Actually, Victoria heard herself say, "I could probably take a few hours." Both Daniel and Lily turned to stare at her. "Really?" Lily's eyes went wide. "We could go to the park, or the bookstore, or—" "I have to check my messages first," Victoria interrupted, already second-guessing the impulse. "But yeah, if your dad is okay with it." Daniel looked at her carefully, searching for something in her expression. "You sure?" he asked quietly. "No," Victoria admitted, "but I'm going to do it anyway." 2 hours later, Victoria found herself at Shelby Park, pushing Lily on the swings and trying to remember the last time she'd spent a Saturday morning doing something that wasn't work-related. Lily was fearless, pumping her legs to go higher while shouting instructions, "Push me harder! I want to go all the way around." "That's not physically possible," Victoria said, but she pushed harder anyway. "Everything's possible if you try hard enough. That's what Dad says." Victoria smiled despite herself. "Your dad is very optimistic." "What's optimistic mean?" "It means he believes good things can happen even when things seem hard." Lily considered this while swinging. "Are things hard for you right now?" The directness of the question caught Victoria off guard. "Yeah," she admitted, "they are." "Because of work?" "How did you know?" "Dad told me you have a very important job that's really stressful. He said that's why you've been busy lately." Lily slowed the swing with her feet and turned to look at Victoria. "Do you like your job?" Victoria opened her mouth to give the standard answer. Of course she liked it. It was challenging and important and exactly what she'd worked toward her entire career. But Lily was looking at her with those earnest 8-year-old eyes, and Victoria found she couldn't lie. "I used to," she said. "Now I'm not sure." "Then why do you do it?" Because I'm good at it. And because people expect me to." Lily wrinkled her nose. "That seems like a dumb reason." Victoria laughed, sharp and surprised. "Yeah, I guess it does." They left the swings and walked to the duck pond where Lily had smuggled a bag of old bread despite Victoria's warnings about not feeding the ducks. "Everyone feeds the ducks," Lily insisted, tossing pieces into the water. "The sign says not to, but everyone does it anyway." "You're a rebel." "I'm practical. The ducks are hungry." Victoria sat on a bench watching Lily commune with the waterfowl, her phone buzzing constantly in her pocket with work emails she was determinedly ignoring. "Can I ask you something?" Lily said, returning to the bench after depleting her bread supply. "Sure." "Are you going to marry my dad?" Victoria choked on air. "What?" "Are you going to marry him?" Lily repeated, as if it were the most normal question in the world. "Because he really likes you. And I really like you. And I think it would be cool to have someone else around besides just us." "Lily, your dad and I haven't even been dating that long." "So? When you know, you know. That's what they always say in movies. Real life isn't like movies, sweetheart." "I know that." Lily rolled her eyes. "I'm not stupid, but I also know that Dad is happier when you're around. And you smile more when you're with us. So it seems like maybe you should be together more." Victoria stared at this 8-year-old philosopher, completely unprepared for the conversation. I care about your dad very much, she said carefully, and I care about you. But grown-up relationships are complicated. Why? Because we have different lives, different responsibilities. I have my job, and your dad has his business. And so what? My friend Emma's parents both have jobs and they're married. It's not that simple. Why not? Victoria didn't have a good answer. They spent the rest of the afternoon at a bookstore, where Lily selected 3 new books with meticulous care, while Victoria pretended to browse, but actually just watched this confident, articulate child navigate the shelves like she owned the place. She's wonderful, the bookstore clerk commented when they checked out. Your daughter? Oh, I'm not, Victoria started. She's my dad's girlfriend, Lily announced proudly, solving the problem with characteristic directness. The clerk smiled knowingly and bagged the books. As they walked back to Daniel's truck, Victoria had left her car at his house. Lily reached up and took her hand. I'm glad you stayed today, she said. This was fun. Victoria squeezed the small hand in hers, feeling that fracture in her chest widen a little more. Yeah, she said softly. It was. Daniel came home around 6, tired and covered in sawdust, to find Victoria and Lily in the kitchen making dinner together. Or rather, Lily was directing dinner preparation while Victoria followed instructions, completely out of her depth but gamely attempting to dice vegetables according to an 8-year-old's exacting standards. That piece is too big, Lily said critically. The carrots have to be the same size or they cook wrong. How do you know this? Victoria asked. I watch cooking shows, duh. Daniel stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching them, a smile spreading across his face. Smells good in here, he announced. Lily spun around. Dad, we're making stir-fry. Victoria didn't know how to cut vegetables, but I'm teaching her. Is that right? I have many hidden deficiencies, Victoria said dryly. Apparently vegetable preparation is one of them. They ate dinner together, the 3 of them crowded around Daniel's small kitchen table, and it felt so much like a family that Victoria had to excuse herself to the bathroom just to catch her breath. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, still wearing Daniel's hoodie. No makeup, completely unpolished. She looked like someone's girlfriend, someone's potential stepmother. She looked like someone who belonged. The realization terrified her. When she returned to the kitchen, Daniel was loading the dishwasher while Lily set up a board game in the living room. You okay? He asked quietly. I don't know, Victoria admitted. I spent the day playing in parks and buying books and cooking dinner. I haven't checked my work email in hours. And the terrifying thing is, I don't care. Daniel dried his hands and turned to face her. Is that a bad thing? It should be. I have a board meeting Monday. My career is imploding. I should be working. But you're not. No. Victoria looked toward the living room where Lily was arranging game pieces. I'm here. With you. With her. And it feels more important than anything waiting at the office. Maybe it is more important. Or maybe I'm just running away from my problems. Or maybe, Daniel said gently, you're finally running toward something instead of just running. Victoria didn't have an answer for that. They played board games until Lily's bedtime, suffering through her competitive nature and creative interpretation of the rules. When Daniel carried his daughter upstairs for bed, Victoria cleaned up the game pieces and tried not to think about Monday. Daniel came back down 20 minutes later. She's out, he reported. Wants you to come say goodnight before you leave. Victoria climbed the stairs and poked her head into Lily's room. Hey, kiddo, are you leaving? Lily's voice was sleepy but hopeful. Soon, I need to get home. Or you could stay again. We have extra toothbrushes. Victoria smiled. I'll think about it. Think hard, Lily yawned. Today was really fun. You should be here more. Your dad might get tired of me. No, he wouldn't. He loves you. The words hung in the air, simple and devastating in their 8-year-old certainty. Victoria kissed Lily's forehead. Get some sleep, rebel. Night, Victoria. Downstairs, Daniel was waiting on the porch with 2 beers. They sat together on the steps, watching the neighborhood settle into evening quiet. She told me you love me, Victoria said after a long silence. Daniel took a sip of his beer. Did she now? Does she make a habit of speaking for you? Only when she's right. He turned to look at her, his expression serious. I wasn't planning to say it yet. Didn't want to scare you off, but yeah, I do. Victoria's throat tightened. Daniel, you don't have to say it back. I'm not expecting that. I wanted you to know, whatever happens with your job, whatever you decide about your life, I'm here. That's not going to change. Victoria set down her beer and kissed him, pouring all the emotions she couldn't articulate into the contact. When they broke apart, Daniel was smiling. So, he said, was that a I love you too, or a please stop talking? It was a I'm terrified, but I think I might love you anyway. I'll take it. They sat on the porch until late, talking about everything except the board meeting that was now less than 48 hours away. And when Victoria finally drove home to her empty apartment, she felt the fracture in her chest split wide open, not breaking her, but making space for something new to grow. The board meeting started at 9 a.m. Monday morning, and Victoria walked into the conference room knowing her career hung in the balance. She'd spent all day Sunday preparing her presentation, refining the numbers, crafting arguments she hoped would convince the board that the expansion project could still succeed. She'd barely slept, running through scenarios and rebuttals until her eyes burned and her head throbbed. Now she stood at the head of the polished mahogany table, facing 12 executives whose expressions ranged from skeptical to openly hostile. Richard Pemberton sat at the far end, his face carefully neutral. Beside him was Catherine Walsh, the board chairwoman, a severe woman in her 60s who'd built her reputation on ruthless efficiency. The others were a mix of investors, senior executives, and corporate lawyers, all of them waiting to see if Victoria could save herself. Let's begin, Catherine said, her voice clipped and businesslike. Ms. Hale, you have 30 minutes to present your revised plan for the Nashville expansion. I suggest you make it compelling. Victoria advanced her first slide and launched into her presentation. She walked them through the cost overruns, explaining each one with data and context. She showed them the revised timeline, the renegotiated contracts, the strategic cuts that would bring the project back toward budget without sacrificing core functionality. She presented alternative scenarios, risk assessments, and contingency plans. It was a masterclass in corporate strategy, drawing on every skill she'd honed over 15 years in the industry, and she could see in their faces that it wasn't enough. The questions started immediately after she finished. Sharp, pointed inquiries designed to expose weaknesses in her plan. These cost projections assume optimal conditions, one board member noted. What happens when we hit another delay? The revised timeline adds 3 months to completion, another observed. That pushes us past our fiscal year deadline. How do we explain that to shareholders? You're asking for an additional $12 million in funding, Richard said, his tone carefully measured. Where exactly do you propose we find that capital? Victoria answered each question as best she could, but she felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. These weren't people looking for solutions. These were people looking for an excuse to cut their losses. The meeting stretched past the 30-minute mark, then past an hour. Victoria's throat went dry from talking. Her hands trembled slightly as she clicked through slides, though she kept them steady enough that no one seemed to notice. Finally, Catherine held up one hand. Thank you, Ms. Hale. That's sufficient. Please wait outside while the board deliberates. Victoria gathered her materials with as much dignity as she could manage and walked out of the conference room. The hallway outside was empty and coldly impersonal, all glass walls and modern art that probably cost more than Daniel's truck. She sat on a bench and stared at her hands, trying to control the panic rising in her chest. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. How's it going? She typed back. Not good. His response came immediately. Want me to come down there? Victoria smiled despite everything. And do what? Beat up the board of directors? If necessary. My knight in flannel armor. Always. Seriously, though, you okay? She stared at the question, trying to formulate an honest answer. Was she okay? Her career was imploding. Everything she'd worked for was crumbling. In about 10 minutes, she'd probably be asked to resign from the most important position she'd ever held. And yet somehow, sitting in this sterile hallway, texting with a contractor who made her feel more valued in 6 weeks than her corporate career had in 15 years, she felt strangely calm. I think I will be, she typed. The conference room door opened. Catherine's assistant appeared. Ms. Hale, they're ready for you. Victoria stood, smoothed her skirt, and walked back into the room. The board members were arranged exactly as before, but their expressions had shifted. Less hostile now, more resigned. Catherine spoke first. Ms. Hale, this board appreciates the effort you've put into salvaging the Nashville expansion. Your presentation was thorough, and your revised plan shows considerable strategic thinking. Victoria waited for the axe to fall. However, Catherine continued, we've concluded that the fundamental challenges of this project extend beyond budget management. The timeline was unrealistic from the beginning, the market conditions have shifted unfavorably, and the regulatory environment has proven more complex than anticipated. With respect, Victoria said carefully, those were all factors I raised when I took this position. I told you the expansion would require more time and resources than initially allocated. Yes, you did. Richard leaned forward. Which is why this board doesn't hold you personally responsible for the project's failure. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Failure. We're suspending the Nashville expansion effective immediately, Catherine said. We'll maintain a minimal presence here for existing contracts, but the build-out of new facilities is canceled. The 400 employees who were scheduled to relocate will remain in our Chicago office. Victoria felt something cold settle in her stomach. You're shutting down the entire project. We're cutting our losses before they become catastrophic. And my position? Catherine's expression softened almost imperceptibly. We're offering you two options. You can return to Chicago and resume your previous role as VP of Operations, or you can accept a severance package and part ways with Meridian Solutions. Those are my choices, demotion or termination. We prefer to think of it as a lateral move rather than a demotion, Richard said smoothly. Your talents would be well utilized in Chicago. Victoria looked around the table at these people who'd hired her 6 weeks ago with promises of autonomy and opportunity, who'd set her up to fail and were now offering her scraps. She thought about Daniel's words on his porch. Let them replace you. Walk away. Find something that doesn't require you to destroy yourself. She thought about Lily asking why she did a job she didn't like anymore. She thought about the weekend she'd just spent pushing swings and cooking dinner and feeling more alive than she had in months. I'll take the severance, Victoria said. The board members exchanged glances. Clearly, they'd expected her to accept the Chicago position, to slink back with her tail between her legs and be grateful for the opportunity. You're certain? Catherine asked. The Chicago position is still available if you'd like time to consider. I'm certain. Victoria stood, gathering her materials for the second time that morning. I'll have my resignation letter on your desk by end of day. Thank you for the opportunity. She walked out of the conference room with her head high, made it to her office, closed the door, and promptly collapsed into her chair as the adrenaline drained out of her body. She'd just quit her job, walked away from a 6-figure salary, stock options, benefits, everything she'd spent her entire career building toward. Her hands were shaking again, and this time she couldn't stop them. Her phone rang. Daniel. Hey, she answered, her voice unsteady. What happened? He sounded worried. Your text sounded bad. They canceled the expansion, offered me my old job back in Chicago or a severance package. And? I took the severance. Victoria laughed, slightly hysterical. I quit, Daniel. I just walked away from everything. There was a pause on the other end of the line. How do you feel? He asked. Victoria took inventory of her emotions. Terror, relief, uncertainty, a strange, buoyant sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years. Honestly, I have no idea. Come over, Daniel said immediately. Don't go back to your apartment. Come here. It's Monday. Don't you have work? I'm the boss. I can take a personal day. Come over. Victoria looked around her office. The desk covered with reports for a project that no longer existed. The view of Nashville from 14 floors up. The leather chair that had seemed like such a trophy when she first sat in it. Okay, she said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She made it to Daniel's house in 15, driving too fast and barely remembering the route. He was waiting on the porch when she pulled up, still in his work clothes, but clearly having canceled whatever job he'd had scheduled. Lily was at school, the house quiet except for the sound of birds in the trees. Victoria got out of the car and stood in the driveway, suddenly overwhelmed by the enormity of what she'd done. I quit my job, she said again, as if saying it out loud would make it real. I know. I don't have a backup plan. I don't have another position lined up. I just quit. Daniel walked down the porch steps and pulled her into a hug. Victoria buried her face against his shoulder and started crying. Not the quiet, controlled tears from before, but full-body sobs that shook her entire frame. I failed, she gasped between sobs. They set me up to fail and I let them, and now I have nothing. That's not true. Daniel's voice was steady, solid. You have skills, you have experience. You have a whole life ahead of you that doesn't involve killing yourself for people who don't appreciate you. You don't understand. This was supposed to be the pinnacle. The CEO position was everything I worked for. So find a new pinnacle. He pulled back slightly, holding her face between his hands. Victoria, you're 41 years old. That's not the end of anything. That's just a new beginning. I don't know how to begin again. Then learn. He kissed her forehead. Come on, let's go inside. They sat on his couch, Victoria still wearing her business suit and heels, Daniel in his work jeans and flannel, and talked through everything that had happened. Victoria described the board meeting in detail. The hostile questions, the resigned expressions, the carefully worded dismissal disguised as options. Daniel listened without interrupting, occasionally squeezing her hand. The worst part, Victoria said, staring at the coffee table, is that they were right. The project was doomed from the start. I knew it when I took the position, but I convinced myself I could make it work through sheer force of will. Why did you take it if you knew it was doomed? Because I wanted to prove I could. Because it was a CEO position, and you don't turn those down. Because my entire identity has been built on being the person who succeeds when everyone else fails. She laughed bitterly. Turns out I'm not that person after all. Or maybe you are, Daniel said quietly. Just not in the way you thought. What's that supposed to mean? You succeeded at recognizing a toxic situation and walking away from it. That takes more courage than staying and pretending everything's fine. Victoria wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. They sat in silence for a while, Victoria's head resting on Daniel's shoulder, both of them processing the seismic shift her life had just taken. What are you going to do now? Daniel finally asked. I have no idea. The severance package will cover me for about 6 months, but after that, she trailed off. I'll need to find another position, start interviewing, maybe relocate if necessary. Daniel's arm tightened around her shoulders. Relocate where? Wherever the jobs are. San Francisco, maybe. Or back to Chicago. What about Nashville? What about it? You could stay here. Victoria pulled back to look at him. And do what? There aren't a lot of CEO positions just lying around. So don't be a CEO. Daniel's expression was serious. Find something else, something that doesn't require you to sacrifice your entire life. Like what? He hesitated, and Victoria could see him wrestling with something. What? She pressed. I have an idea, but you're going to think it's crazy. Try me. I just quit my job with no backup plan. My threshold for crazy is pretty high right now. Daniel took a breath. Come work for me. Victoria stared at him. What? Work for my company. Hayes Home Repair. He was talking faster now, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them back for a while. You're brilliant at organization and strategy. I've seen the way you analyze problems and create systems. That's exactly what my business needs. Daniel, I appreciate the thought, but I run tech companies. I don't know anything about construction. You don't need to know about construction. I know about construction. What I don't know is how to run a business properly. I've been figuring it out as I go for 5 years, and it's a mess. My invoicing system is a disaster. I lose money on half my jobs because I'm bad at estimating, and I turn down contracts I could probably handle because I don't have proper project management. Victoria shook her head. This is charity. It's not charity. It's a job offer. He leaned forward, his intensity increasing. Look, I know it's not what you're used to. The salary would be a fraction of what you made at Meridian. There's no corner office or stock options. But it's real work that actually matters, helping real people with real problems. And you'd be good at it. You're offering me a job at a small repair company because you feel sorry for me. I'm offering you a job because my company is struggling and you have the exact skills to fix it. The timing just happens to work out for both of us. Victoria stood up and walked to the window, her mind racing. Work for a home repair company? It was absurd. She'd spent 15 years climbing the corporate ladder, building a reputation, establishing herself as a serious executive. What would people think if she took a job at a small contractor's business? What would my role even be? She asked without turning around. Whatever you want it to be. Operations manager, maybe? You'd handle the business side, estimates, scheduling, client relations, finances. I'd keep doing the actual repair work with my crew. That's basically an office manager position. So? You're too good for office management? Victoria turned to face him. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I meant that I was a CEO. I managed budgets in the hundreds of millions. I oversaw departments with hundreds of employees. And you're asking me to schedule appointments and send invoices for a company with 3 people. 4 if you join, Daniel said calmly. And yeah, I'm asking you to do work that's beneath your credentials. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe starting smaller means you actually get to see the impact of what you're doing instead of just pushing paper around for shareholders. Victoria wanted to dismiss it outright, to laugh at the absurdity of the suggestion. But she remembered the weekend she'd just spent with Lily, the simple satisfaction of dicing vegetables and playing board games and being present in a way her corporate job had never allowed. She remembered how alive Daniel seemed when he talked about his work, how proud he was of a finished deck or a repaired bathroom. She remembered Richard Pemberton's cold expression when he'd called her project a failure. I need to think about it, she said finally. Take all the time you need. Daniel stood and walked over to her. I'm not trying to pressure you. I just want you to know the option exists. Why are you doing this? Because I love you. He said it simply, without theatrics. And because watching you destroy yourself for a company that doesn't appreciate you is killing me. And because I genuinely think you'd be good at this if you gave it a chance. Victoria kissed him then, trying to convey all the gratitude and fear and confusion she couldn't articulate. When they broke apart, Daniel smiled slightly. Does that mean you'll consider it? It means I'll think about it. Don't push your luck. Over the next 3 days, Victoria's life continued its free fall into chaos. The news of the expansion cancellation hit the tech industry press on Tuesday. By Wednesday, her professional network was buzzing with speculation about what had happened. Her phone filled with messages from former colleagues, some offering sympathy, others clearly fishing for gossip. She ignored most of them. Thursday brought the official severance paperwork from Meridian Solutions, 6 months' salary, continuation of benefits for 90 days, and a non-compete clause that prevented her from working for direct competitors for 1 year. She signed everything in a daze and sent it back via email. Friday morning, she woke up in her apartment and realized she had nowhere to be. No meetings, no conference calls, no urgent emails demanding immediate attention. The freedom felt less liberating and more terrifying. She made coffee and sat on her minimalist couch staring at her laptop, trying to muster the energy to update her resume and start the job search process. Instead, she found herself thinking about Daniel's offer. It was insane, obviously. Taking a job that probably paid $40,000 a year after making 3 times that. Working for a company so small it didn't even have an HR department. Scheduling contractors and managing invoices instead of developing corporate strategy. Everything about it screamed step backward. And yet, she thought about the stack of past due invoices she'd seen on Daniel's kitchen table that first night. The disorganized filing system in his home office. The way he admitted he lost money on jobs because he couldn't estimate costs properly. Those were problems she could fix. Easily. The strategic part of her brain, the part that had analyzed complex organizational challenges for 15 years, started automatically breaking down what Daniel's business needed. Better project management software, standardized estimate templates, a client relationship system, proper accounting instead of the shoebox and Excel method he was probably using. She could transform his operation in a matter of months. The question was, did she want to? Her phone rang. Marcus. Hey, she answered. How did you get my number? Daniel gave it to me. Hope that's okay. He sounded hesitant. I heard about what happened with your job. I'm sorry. Thanks. Listen, Sarah wanted me to call. We're having people over for dinner Saturday night. Nothing fancy, just burgers and beer. She thought you might want to come, get out of your apartment, be around people. Victoria's instinct was to decline. She wasn't in the mood for socializing, for making small talk about her career implosion with people she barely knew, but the alternative was sitting alone in her apartment, spiraling into anxiety. "Okay," she heard herself say. "What time?" "6. And Victoria? Daniel's going to be there, with Lily, just so you know." "Of course he is," Marcus laughed. "See you Saturday." Tut. Saturday evening found Victoria standing on Marcus and Sarah's front porch in jeans and a sweater, holding a bottle of wine and second-guessing her decision to come. Through the window, she could see people moving around inside, hear the sound of laughter and conversation, normal people doing normal things, completely removed from the corporate world she'd just exited. Before she could knock, the door swung open. Sarah stood there grinning, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. "I saw you lurking out here. Come in." The house was warm and chaotic in the best way. 3 kids, Lily and Marcus's twins, were running around the living room playing some elaborate game that involved a lot of shouting. Marcus was in the kitchen manning the grill visible through the back door. Several other people Victoria didn't recognize were scattered around, talking and drinking. "Everyone," Sarah announced. "This is Victoria. Be nice to her, or I'll kick you out." A chorus of friendly hellos greeted her. Daniel appeared from the kitchen, a beer in one hand and a smile on his face that made Victoria's chest tighten. "Hey," he said quietly. "Glad you came. Wasn't sure I would until about 10 minutes ago." "That's fair." He handed her his beer. "Here, you look like you need this more than I do." Over the next hour, Victoria found herself gradually relaxing into the easy atmosphere of the gathering. She met Jacob and Michelle, a couple who ran a coffee shop downtown. Tom, who was Marcus's business partner in the electrical contracting business. Elena, a nurse who worked with Sarah at the hospital. Regular people with regular jobs, none of them particularly concerned with corporate hierarchies or strategic planning. Lily appointed herself Victoria's tour guide, dragging her around to show off various features of the house and introduce her to the twins' pet hamster. "His name is Mr. Whiskers, even though he doesn't have whiskers because he's a hamster," Lily explained seriously. "I tried to tell them that hamsters have whiskers too, but they didn't listen." "The twins are 6, Victoria observed. "I'm not sure they're big on scientific accuracy." "That's what Dad said too." They ate dinner in the backyard as the sun set, everyone crowded around a long picnic table Marcus had built himself. The burgers were good, the conversation easy, and Victoria felt the constant anxiety that had been her companion for weeks finally ease slightly. Sarah sat down next to her while Daniel was inside helping Marcus get ice cream for the kids. "So," Sarah said, "how are you really doing?" Victoria considered lying, giving the polished corporate answer about exploring new opportunities and remaining positive. Instead, she said, "Honestly, I'm terrified." "That's fair. Losing a job is scary. It's not just the job, it's everything." Victoria stared at her beer bottle. "I spent 15 years building a career and now I have no idea who I am without it." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "Can I tell you something?" "Sure." "When I left my first hospital job, I had a complete identity crisis. I'd wanted to be a nurse since I was 12 years old, and suddenly I was working at a place that was crushing my soul. But I didn't know how to leave because being a nurse was who I was. What changed? I realized that I wasn't just a nurse. I was Sarah, who happened to be a nurse. The job didn't define me. It was just something I did." She took a sip of her own beer. "Sounds like you're having a similar realization." "Daniel offered me a job," Victoria said abruptly. Sarah's eyebrows rose. "Working for him?" "Managing the business side of his company. And I'm seriously considering it, which is insane because it's completely beneath my experience level and probably career suicide and—" "Why is it insane?" Sarah interrupted. "Because I was a CEO. I don't do office management." "So? CEOs don't push swings at parks either, but I heard you spent last Saturday doing exactly that." Victoria blinked. "How did you—" "Lily tells me everything. Kid's a chatterbox." Sarah smiled. "Look, I don't know anything about corporate careers or what you're supposed to do next, but I know that I've never seen Daniel this happy. And Lily adores you. And you seem lighter when you're around them. So maybe the question isn't whether the job is beneath you. Maybe it's whether it makes you happy." Before Victoria could respond, the kids came barreling out of the house with Daniel and Marcus following, carrying bowls of ice cream. Lily claimed the seat on Victoria's other side, talking excitedly about the science fair project she was planning involving volcanoes and baking soda. Victoria listened with half her attention, the other half still processing Sarah's words. Whether it makes you happy. Such a simple question. And yet Victoria couldn't remember the last time she'd made a major life decision based on happiness rather than career advancement or professional reputation. The evening stretched on, the conversation flowing easily as darkness fell and someone started a fire in the backyard fire pit. The kids roasted marshmallows with varying degrees of success, mostly burning them and then eating them anyway. Victoria found herself sitting next to Daniel on a blanket spread on the grass, Lily between them attempting to create the perfect s'more. "This one's too burnt," Lily declared, holding up a charred marshmallow. "Dad, you need to rotate it more." "Yes, ma'am," Daniel said solemnly. Victoria watched them work together, the easy affection and gentle teasing, and felt something shift inside her chest. She'd spent her entire adult life chasing a version of success that looked good on paper but felt hollow in practice. Corner offices and salary increases and titles that impressed people at networking events. And here was Daniel, offering her something completely different, something smaller and simpler and probably financially irresponsible. Something that might actually make her happy. "I'll do it," she said quietly. Daniel looked over at her. "Do what?" "Work for you, manage your business. I'll do it." He stared at her for a long moment, marshmallow roasting forgotten. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Victoria felt terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. "I have no idea if this is the right decision, but I'm tired of playing it safe and being miserable. So let's try something different." A slow smile spread across Daniel's face. "You're sure?" "Absolutely not. But I'm doing it anyway." Lily, who had been listening with great interest, pumped her fist in victory. "Yes, this is going to be so cool. Victoria's going to work with us." "Hold on," Victoria said. "I'm working with your dad, not you." "Same thing. Dad always brings me to job sites on weekends. We're a team." Victoria looked at Daniel, who shrugged. "She's not wrong." "What have I gotten myself into?" Victoria muttered. But she was smiling as she said it, and for the first time since walking out of that board meeting, she felt like maybe everything was going to be okay after all. Victoria's first day at Hayes Home Repair started at 7 in the morning on a Monday in early November, and within the first hour, she questioned every decision that had led her to this moment. Daniel's office was actually a converted spare bedroom in his house, cramped and chaotic, in a way that made Victoria's organized corporate soul want to weep. File folders were stacked haphazard on every available surface. Receipts overflowed from shoeboxes. The desk was buried under layers of paperwork dating back at least 3 years. An ancient desktop computer sat in the corner, its screen dark and possibly dead. "So this is where the magic happens," Daniel said, looking slightly embarrassed as he surveyed the disaster zone. Victoria stood in the doorway, briefcase in hand, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual business attire. She'd left her high-rise apartment at 6:30, stopped for coffee, and driven to Daniel's house feeling like she was heading to her first day of high school rather than a job. "Daniel," she said slowly, "when's the last time you organized any of this?" "Define organized." "Filed documents, sorted receipts, backed up data." He scratched the back of his neck. "Does putting everything in boxes count as organizing?" "No." "Then never." Victoria set down her briefcase and rolled up her sleeves. "Okay, show me what you've got." Over the next 3 hours, Daniel walked her through his current system, which was generous to call it a system at all. He kept track of jobs in a spiral notebook, recording client names and addresses in handwriting that was barely legible. Estimates were scribbled on whatever paper was handy and sometimes photographed with his phone before being handed to clients. Invoices were created in a basic Word template, printed and mailed with return envelopes. "How do you track who's paid and who hasn't?" Victoria asked. Daniel showed her another notebook where he crossed off names when checks arrived. "And if someone doesn't pay?" "I call them a few times. Usually they pay eventually." "Usually?" "Sometimes I just eat the loss. It's not worth the hassle of getting aggressive about it." Victoria stared at him. "Daniel, you're basically running a business on hope and paper scraps." "I know it's not sophisticated. It's not about sophistication. It's about basic financial management. She pulled out one of the shoeboxes and dumped receipts across the desk. You have no way of knowing if you're actually profitable. You could be losing money on every job and not realize it until you're bankrupt. I'm not bankrupt. Yet. She started sorting receipts by date. Do you at least file taxes properly? I have an accountant who does that once a year. I just give him all the boxes. All the boxes. Yeah, he seems to manage okay. Victoria laughed despite herself, sharp and slightly hysterical. You're lucky you haven't been audited. Daniel leaned against the doorframe watching her work, a small smile on his face. So you're saying there's room for improvement? I'm saying it's a miracle you're still in business. Does that mean you're going to fix it? Victoria looked around the chaotic office, at the years of disorganization and the mountain of work ahead of her, and felt something she hadn't experienced in months. A challenge that was concrete and fixable, with clear problems and obvious solutions. Yeah, she said, I'm going to fix it. The rest of the week was a whirlwind of organization and system building. Victoria started by creating a basic filing system, sorting documents by year and category. She set up a simple accounting software on the computer after confirming it did, in fact, still work. She built spreadsheets tracking current jobs, pending estimates, and overdue invoices. Daniel's two part-time employees, Miguel and Carlos, stopped by on Wednesday to meet the new boss lady, as Carlos called her. Miguel was in his 50s, a quiet man with calloused hands and an encyclopedic knowledge of plumbing. Carlos was younger, maybe 30, with an easy laugh and a tendency to tell elaborate stories about his weekend adventures. So you're the CEO, Miguel said, shaking Victoria's hand with surprising formality. Former CEO, Victoria corrected. Now I'm just trying to figure out Daniel's filing system. Good luck with that, Carlos said. I once spent 20 minutes looking for a receipt that turned out to be in the glove compartment of his truck. Why was it in the truck? Nobody knows. Daniel works in mysterious ways. Over lunch, the four of them sat around Daniel's kitchen table while Victoria asked questions about their workflow, current projects, and biggest frustrations. The scheduling is the worst part, Miguel admitted. Sometimes we show up to a job and the materials haven't arrived yet because Daniel forgot to order them. Or we finish early and there's nothing else scheduled, so we just go home and lose the day. And the clients, Carlos added. Some of them call Daniel's cell at like 9 at night asking for updates. He answers every time because he's too nice to set boundaries. Daniel looked defensive. They're paying customers. If they have questions, they can wait until business hours, Victoria interrupted. That's what business hours are for. But what if it's an emergency? Then they can call an emergency service and pay emergency prices. You're not available 24/7. See? Carlos grinned. Boss lady gets it. Victoria spent the afternoon creating a proper scheduling system, color-coded by job type and priority level. She set up a Google Calendar that everyone could access, showing who was working where and when. She drafted email templates for common client communications and created a phone script for handling inquiries. By Friday, the office looked almost professional. Files were organized, the desk was clear, and Victoria had implemented the bones of a real business infrastructure. This is incredible, Daniel said, standing in the doorway after picking up Lily from school. It actually looks like a real company. It is a real company. It just needed proper systems. Victoria saved her work and closed the laptop. I also found 12 invoices that were never sent. 12. That's over $8,000 you just forgot to bill. I was getting to them. When? Next year? She handed him a printed list. I'm sending these out Monday. We'll see how many people actually pay. Lily appeared behind her father, peering into the office with wide eyes. Whoa, it's so clean. Did you throw everything away? I organized it. Big difference. Can you organize my room next? Absolutely not, Daniel said quickly. Your room is your responsibility. But Victoria's really good at it, which is why she's working for the company, not being your personal organizer. He ruffled his daughter's hair. Go start your homework. We'll make dinner in a bit. Lily disappeared, grumbling about unfair division of labor. Daniel turned back to Victoria. Seriously, though, thank you. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten until I saw what it could look like. This is just the beginning. We need to talk about pricing structure, marketing strategy, and whether you're actually charging enough to be profitable. Sounds ominous. Sounds like running a business. Victoria stood and stretched, her back aching from hours hunched over the desk. But that can wait until Monday. I think we've both earned the weekend off. Speaking of which, Daniel stepped closer, that familiar warmth in his eyes. What are you doing Saturday? Probably sleeping for 12 hours and questioning my life choices. Why? There's a fall festival downtown. Food trucks, live music, craft vendors. I was thinking we could take Lily, make a day of it. Victoria felt the automatic impulse to decline, to use the weekend to catch up on work or prepare for the next week. Then she remembered that this was exactly the pattern she was trying to break. Okay, she said. That sounds nice. Yeah? Yeah. Pick me up at noon? Daniel smiled and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Saturday turned out to be one of those perfect fall days Nashville occasionally produced. Crisp air, brilliant sunshine, leaves turning gold and red in the trees. The festival was crowded with families and couples wandering between booths selling everything from handmade jewelry to kettle corn. Lily was in heaven, dragging Victoria and Daniel from one attraction to the next with boundless energy. They watched a bluegrass band perform, bought cider donuts from a food truck, and let Lily convince them to enter a pie-eating contest that ended with all three of them covered in whipped cream and laughing too hard to continue. I can't believe you talked me into that, Victoria said, wiping cream off her face with a napkin. I didn't talk you into anything, Lily protested. You volunteered, under duress. You were smiling the whole time. Victoria couldn't argue with that. They spent the afternoon wandering through the craft booths, Lily examining everything with serious concentration while providing running commentary on the quality of various handmade goods. This pottery is nice, she observed at one booth, but the glaze is uneven. See how it's thicker on one side? The vendor looked impressed. You've got a good eye, kiddo. I watch a lot of documentaries, Lily said matter-of-factly. At a jewelry booth, Victoria found herself looking at a display of silver bracelets while Daniel and Lily examined wooden sculptures nearby. See anything you like? The vendor asked, a woman about Victoria's age with kind eyes and paint-stained fingers. Just browsing. That one would look good on you. She pointed to a delicate bracelet with small turquoise stones. The stones are from New Mexico. My sister sends them to me. Victoria picked it up, admiring the craftsmanship. It was beautiful in its simplicity, nothing like the expensive jewelry she used to wear to corporate events. How much? $45. It was more than Victoria wanted to spend on impulse, but something about the bracelet called to her. She was pulling out her wallet when Daniel appeared at her shoulder. I'll get it, he said. Daniel, no, it's too much. It's your 1-week work anniversary present. He was already handing cash to the vendor. Consider it a bonus. The vendor smiled knowingly as she wrapped the bracelet. You two are sweet together. Walking away from the booth with the bracelet on her wrist, Victoria felt oddly emotional. You didn't have to do that, she told Daniel. I wanted to. You've been working crazy hours getting the office organized. Seemed like you deserved something nice. I've worked there for 5 days and already found me $8,000 in missing invoices. I'd say that's worth a bracelet. They found a spot on the grass near the main stage where another band was setting up. Lily immediately befriended a group of kids her age and ran off to play while Victoria and Daniel sat together watching the crowd. Can I ask you something? Daniel said after a while. Always. Are you happy? With the job, I mean. I know it's not what you're used to. Victoria considered the question carefully. Happy felt like too simple a word for the complex mix of emotions she'd been experiencing. There was satisfaction in bringing order to chaos, pride in seeing tangible results from her work. But there was also uncertainty about whether she'd made the right choice, anxiety about her reduced income, and moments where she missed the prestige and power of her old position. I'm not unhappy, she said finally, which is more than I could say about Meridian Solutions. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement. It's honest. She turned to face him. I'm still figuring out what this new version of my life looks like, but I think I'm heading in the right direction. Daniel nodded slowly. Fair enough. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Lily play and listening to the band warm up. I've been thinking, Victoria said eventually, about the business. Uh-oh, that sounds serious. Hayes Home Repair has a lot of potential, but you're leaving money on the table by not marketing properly or expanding your service area. I'm happy with how things are. But you could be making twice what you're making now with just a few strategic changes. Better online presence, targeted advertising, maybe hiring another full-time employee. Victoria. Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I didn't hire you to turn my company into something bigger. I hired you to help me run it better. What's the difference? The difference is that bigger means more stress, more overhead, more time away from Lily. I've been down that road before, remember? Killing myself to build something impressive? It nearly destroyed me. Victoria absorbed this, feeling slightly chastened. I'm sorry. Old habits. I know. You see potential and you want to maximize it. That's what made you good at your corporate job. He took her hand. But this isn't a corporate job. It's a small business that exists to give me and my guys a decent living while still having time for life. That's the whole point. So you don't want to grow at all? I didn't say that. If opportunities come up naturally, great. But I'm not interested in aggressive expansion or building an empire. I just want to do good work and go home at a reasonable hour. It was such a foreign concept to Victoria, who'd spent her entire career focused on growth and advancement, that she struggled to wrap her mind around it. Okay, she said slowly. I can work with that. Can you? Really? Because I need to know you're not going to spend the next 6 months trying to turn this into something it's not meant to be. I promise I'll try to respect your vision, but you have to let me make some improvements. The invoicing system alone was costing you thousands. Deal. Daniel squeezed her hand. As long as we're on the same page. The band started playing, something folksy and upbeat that had people in the crowd tapping their feet. Lily came running back, demanding money for face painting, and the serious conversation dissolved into the easy chaos of the festival. But later that night, after Daniel had dropped her off at her apartment, Victoria sat on her couch staring at the turquoise bracelet and thinking about what he'd said. She'd always equated success with growth, bigger positions, larger budgets, more responsibility. The idea that someone might deliberately choose to stay small to prioritize quality of life over career advancement was genuinely challenging to process. And yet Daniel seemed content in a way Victoria had never been during her corporate climb. He had time for his daughter, time for hobbies, time to actually enjoy his work rather than just survive it. Maybe there was something to be learned there. The following week, Victoria threw herself into improving Hayes Home Repair's operations without trying to expand them. She negotiated better rates with suppliers by consolidating orders. She streamlined the estimate process so Daniel could respond to inquiries faster. She set up a simple website showing before and after photos of completed projects and client testimonials. The results were immediate. 2 new clients contacted them through the website in the first week. 3 of the overdue invoices Victoria had sent out were paid in full. Miguel mentioned that having a clear schedule made his work significantly less stressful. This is what I'm talking about, Carlos said during their Friday lunch meeting, which Victoria had instituted as a weekly check-in. We're getting the same amount of work done, but everything feels easier. That's because we're not constantly scrambling to figure out what's happening, Victoria explained. Organization creates efficiency. Whatever it is, it's working. Miguel turned to Daniel. You should give her a raise. Daniel laughed. She's been here 2 weeks. So? Good help is hard to find. After Miguel and Carlos left for their afternoon job, Daniel cornered Victoria in the office. They're right, you know. You're making a huge difference. I'm just applying basic business principles. Don't downplay it. You took a chaotic mess and turned it into something functional in less than 2 weeks. That's impressive. Victoria felt herself blushing, unused to compliments about work that seemed so simple compared to what she used to do. It's easy when the baseline is total chaos, she deflected. Take the compliment, Victoria. Fine, thank you. You're welcome. He leaned against the door frame, studying her with that intense focus that always made her slightly nervous. Can I ask you something personal? How personal? Do you miss it, your old job? Victoria set down the spreadsheet she'd been working on and considered the question honestly. Sometimes, she admitted, I miss the prestige, the feeling of being important. Walking into meetings where people knew my reputation and respected my opinion. But I don't miss the stress, the politics, the constant pressure to prove myself. She gestured at the organized office around them. This is simpler, smaller. But it's real in a way that corporate work never was. What do you mean? When I worked at Meridian, I could spend months on a project and never see the actual impact. Everything was abstract, percentage points and quarterly reports and shareholder value. Here, we fix someone's leaking roof and they're grateful. We renovate a bathroom and they send thank you cards. The results are immediate and tangible. Sounds like you're becoming a convert. Let's not go crazy. I'm still adjusting. She smiled slightly. But yeah, I think I'm starting to understand why you love this. That weekend, Victoria did something she hadn't done in years. She took 2 full days off with no work whatsoever. Saturday morning, she slept until 9, a luxury she hadn't allowed herself since college. She made breakfast in her apartment, read a book for pleasure instead of professional development, and took a long walk through Centennial Park without checking her phone every 5 minutes. Sunday she spent at Daniel's house, helping Lily with a school project about the solar system, while Daniel worked on fixing his truck's brakes in the driveway. Did you know that Jupiter has 79 moons? Lily informed her, carefully gluing cotton balls to a painted styrofoam ball. 79! That's so many moons! That is a lot of moons, Victoria agreed, holding the planet steady while Lily worked. How many moons does Earth have? Just 1. That seems unfair. Jupiter gets 79 and we only get 1? Maybe quality over quantity? Lily considered this seriously. That's a good point. Our moon is pretty nice. They worked together for over an hour, building a solar system model that was probably too elaborate for a 3rd-grade project, but that Lily insisted on making scientifically accurate. When Daniel came in from the garage, grease-stained and satisfied, he found them surrounded by painted planets and craft supplies. How's it going in here? We're making Jupiter's moons, Lily announced. All 79 of them. All of them? The major ones, Victoria corrected. We're not insane. Could have fooled me. You've got glitter everywhere. Glitter is an essential part of space, Lily said with absolute authority. They ordered pizza for dinner and ate it while watching a documentary about Mars that Lily had been dying to see. Victoria found herself completely absorbed in the narrator's description of Martian geology, Daniel's arm warm around her shoulders, Lily sprawled across both their laps, asking a million questions. This was her life now. Pizza and space documentaries and glitter-covered craft projects. It was so far removed from corporate dinners and networking events that it might as well have been on Mars itself. And the strange thing was, she didn't miss the old version at all. Monday morning brought their first real challenge as a team. Victoria was at the office early, reviewing the week's schedule, when Daniel's phone rang. She could hear his side of the conversation from the kitchen. Yes, Mrs. Patterson. I understand. No, that's not acceptable. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He appeared in the office doorway looking stressed. Problem? Victoria asked. Big one. The Pattersons' bathroom renovation. Miguel and Carlos finished it Friday, but apparently there's a leak in the new shower. Water's been dripping through the ceiling into the dining room all weekend. That's bad. That's a disaster. The Pattersons are some of our best clients. They've referred 3 other jobs to us. He grabbed his keys. I need to get over there right now and figure out what went wrong. Want me to come with you? Daniel hesitated. It might get messy. Upset clients aren't fun to deal with. I spent 15 years managing crisis situations. I think I can handle an angry homeowner. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a beautiful craftsman home in Sylvan Park. Mrs. Patterson met them at the door, her expression tight with controlled anger. Mr. Hayes, thank you for coming so quickly. Mrs. Patterson, I'm so sorry about this. This is Victoria. She works with me. Can you show us what's happening? Mrs. Patterson led them upstairs to a bathroom that did indeed look beautiful. New tile, modern fixtures, excellent craftsmanship. But the ceiling of the dining room below showed unmistakable water damage, and there was a bucket positioned to catch steady drips. Daniel immediately went to work investigating while Victoria stayed with Mrs. Patterson, listening to her vent about the inconvenience and expense and disappointment. We trusted you with this project, Mrs. Patterson said, her voice cracking slightly. Everyone said Hayes Home Repair was reliable, and now my dining room ceiling is ruined. I completely understand your frustration, Victoria said calmly. This isn't the standard we expect from our work, and we're going to make it right. How? The damage is already done. Daniel's upstairs right now figuring out what went wrong. Once we know the cause, we'll fix the shower leak and repair all the ceiling damage at no additional cost to you. That could take weeks. It won't. I'll personally ensure this gets priority treatment. We'll have a crew here tomorrow to start repairs. Mrs. Patterson looked slightly mollified. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. And in the meantime, I'd like to offer you a 20% discount on the original bathroom renovation cost as an apology for the inconvenience. That's generous. Daniel appeared at the bottom of the stairs, looking relieved. Found the problem. One of the shower pan connections wasn't sealed properly. Simple fix, shouldn't take more than an hour. And Mrs. Patterson, Victoria's right, we'll handle all the ceiling repair at our expense. Between Daniel's technical competence and Victoria's smooth client management, they managed to turn a potential disaster into a demonstration of excellent service recovery. By the time they left an hour later, Mrs. Patterson was smiling again and promising to still recommend them to her friends. In the truck on the way back, Daniel was quiet. "What?" Victoria finally asked. "That was impressive, the way you handled her." That's basic client relations. Keep them informed, acknowledge their feelings, offer concrete solutions. Miguel or Carlos would have just apologized and run away. I would have probably gotten defensive. He glanced over at her. You made her feel heard without making promises we couldn't keep. That's a skill. It's what I used to do for billion-dollar clients. Turns out it scales down pretty well. They spent the rest of the drive in comfortable silence, and Victoria felt something shift in their dynamic. This wasn't just Daniel's company anymore with Victoria helping out. They were becoming actual partners, each bringing different strengths to create something better than either could manage alone. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of organized chaos. November became December, and Victoria found herself settling into routines she'd never imagined having. Mornings at Daniel's office, organizing schedules and managing invoices. Occasional site visits to meet clients or inspect finished work. Weekly team lunches where they reviewed progress and addressed problems. And increasingly, evenings and weekends spent with Daniel and Lily, building something that felt dangerously close to a real family. Her severance package was starting to run low, which meant she needed to formalize her employment situation with Daniel. They'd been operating on a handshake agreement and rough salary estimate, but Victoria's organized soul demanded proper contracts and clear expectations. She brought it up one evening after Lily had gone to bed, both of them sitting in Daniel's living room with spreadsheets spread across the coffee table. "We need to talk about my official position and salary," Victoria said. Daniel looked uncomfortable. "Right. I've been meaning to bring that up. You can't afford to pay me what I'm worth, I know that." "Victoria, let me finish. You can't afford market rate for someone with my experience, but I also don't need corporate-level compensation anymore. My apartment lease is up next month, and I'm planning to find somewhere cheaper. My expenses are way down since I'm not buying expensive work clothes or eating out constantly." "What are you proposing?" Victoria slid a piece of paper across the table. "This is what I think is fair. It's enough to live on comfortably, but not so much that it hurts the company's profitability." Daniel looked at the number and frowned. "This is less than half what you made before." "I know." "Victoria, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm offering. This works for both of us." "What if you regret it? What if 6 months from now you realize you want your old career back?" Victoria thought about the question seriously. It was possible. She might wake up one day missing the power and prestige of corporate leadership, but somehow, sitting in Daniel's cluttered living room with financial spreadsheets and a half-empty cup of coffee, that future felt increasingly unlikely. "Then I'll deal with it then," she said. "But right now, this is what I want." Daniel studied her face for a long moment, searching for doubt or hesitation. "Okay," he finally said. "But I want to add something." "What?" "Partnership. Not just employee, but actual partner in the business. Equal ownership, equal decision-making." Victoria stared at him. "Daniel, that's insane. This is your company. You built it. And you're transforming it into something sustainable. We're a team. The paperwork should reflect that. That's a huge financial commitment. What if things don't work out between us personally? Then we figure it out like adults, but I'm not worried about that." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I trust you, Victoria. Not just with my business, but with my life. With Lily's life. I want you all in, not just as an employee. Victoria felt tears prickling at her eyes, overwhelmed by the enormity of what he was offering. Okay, she whispered. Partners. They sealed the agreement with a handshake that turned into a kiss that turned into Victoria staying over again, this time without the pretense of separate sleeping arrangements. The next morning, Victoria woke up in Daniel's bed to the sound of Lily banging on the door. Dad, Victoria! Are you guys awake? We're going to be late for school. Daniel groaned and checked his phone. It's 6:30. School doesn't start for 2 hours. Yeah, but I'm hungry and you're still sleeping. Victoria laughed into Daniel's shoulder. I think we've been summoned. This is your life now. Early morning wake-up calls from an 8-year-old alarm clock. I've had worse wake-up calls. They stumbled downstairs to find Lily already dressed and working on her homework at the kitchen table. You're both slow, she observed. I've been up for an hour. Why? Victoria asked, starting coffee. Couldn't sleep. Too excited about the science fair next week. Over breakfast, Lily described her volcano project in exhaustive detail, while Victoria and Daniel exchanged amused glances across the table. This was their life now. All three of them, together, building something that looked nothing like what Victoria had imagined, but felt more right than anything she'd ever planned. And as December settled over Nashville, bringing cold mornings and the promise of holidays, Victoria found herself thinking less about what she'd lost and more about what she'd gained. She'd lost a prestigious position, a 6-figure salary, and the respect of the corporate world. But she'd gained a partnership worth more than money, a family she hadn't known she wanted, and work that actually mattered to real people. The math worked out better than any spreadsheet could capture. By March, Victoria had been working at Hayes Home Repair for 4 months, and the transformation was remarkable. The company's revenue had increased by 38% without taking on more work, simply by eliminating inefficiencies and collecting on overdue invoices. They'd hired a third part-time employee, a young woman named Jessica, who handled client communications and scheduling. The office ran smoothly, jobs stayed on schedule, and for the first time in years, Daniel's business felt sustainable rather than precarious. But more importantly, Victoria felt sustainable. She'd moved out of her expensive high-rise apartment in January and into a smaller place in East Nashville, just 10 minutes from Daniel's house. The rent was half what she'd been paying, and the neighborhood had actual character. Local coffee shops, weekend farmers markets, people who walked their dogs and knew their neighbors' names. She'd sold most of her corporate wardrobe and restocked with jeans, comfortable sweaters, and practical boots. Her daily uniform now consisted of clothes she could actually move in, clothes that didn't require dry cleaning or make her feel like she was wearing a costume. The strangest part was how normal it all felt. How quickly she'd adapted to a life that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. She was thinking about this on a Tuesday morning in late March, sitting in the office reviewing estimates, when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. "This is Victoria," she answered absently, eyes still on the spreadsheet. "Victoria Hale?" The voice was professional, male, unfamiliar. "This is Robert Chen from Apex Technologies. Do you have a moment?" Victoria's hand stilled on the mouse. Apex Technologies was one of the largest tech companies in the country, a direct competitor to Meridian Solutions. "I have a few minutes," she said carefully. "What's this regarding?" "We're expanding our Nashville operations and looking for someone to lead the division. Your name came up in our search. I was hoping we could discuss the position." Victoria felt her heart rate pick up. "How did you get my number?" "Professional network. Your reputation precedes you, Ms. Hale. We're aware of what happened at Meridian, and frankly, we think they made a mistake letting you go." "That's kind of you to say, but I'm currently employed at a home repair company." Robert's tone wasn't quite condescending, but it was close. "With all due respect, that seems like a significant step down from your capabilities. We're prepared to offer you a position more aligned with your experience. VP of Operations for our Nashville division. Competitive salary, full benefits, stock options, the works." Victoria leaned back in her chair, processing this unexpected development. 6 months ago, this call would have been everything she wanted. A chance to reclaim her career, prove that the Meridian failure was just a temporary setback, return to the world of prestige and power she'd spent 15 years building. "I appreciate the offer," she said slowly, "but I'm happy where I am. Ms. Hale, I don't think you understand the scope of what we're offering. This isn't a lateral move from your Meridian position. It's a significant upgrade, and between you and me, we're prepared to be very flexible on compensation. It's not about money." "Then what is it about?" Because looking at your LinkedIn profile, you went from CEO of a major expansion project to office manager at a small contractor. That's not a career trajectory, it's career suicide. Victoria felt irritation flare at his presumption. Mr. Chen, I appreciate your interest, but I'm not looking for new opportunities right now. Thank you for thinking of me. At least take a meeting. Hear what we have to say. There's no obligation. I really don't think 1 hour of your time, that's all I'm asking. We'll fly you to our headquarters in Seattle, cover all expenses, just have a conversation. If you're not interested after that, no hard feelings. Victoria was about to refuse again when Daniel appeared in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. He mouthed, "Client?" and she shook her head. "Can I think about it and call you back?" she asked Robert. "Of course, but Victoria, don't wait too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often." After she hung up, Daniel handed her a coffee and settled into the chair across from her desk. "Everything okay? You look stressed." Victoria told him about the call, watching his expression carefully for signs of worry or jealousy. Instead, he just looked thoughtful. "Apex Technologies, that's a big company, right?" "Huge. They're offering me basically my dream job from 6 months ago." "And you told them you weren't interested?" "I told them I was happy here." "Are you?" Daniel asked quietly. "Happy here?" Victoria set down her coffee and met his eyes. "Yeah, I am. But the fact that they called it all is making me question things." "What kinds of things?" "Whether I'm settling, whether I'm hiding from my real career by playing house with a small business, whether I'm going to regret this in 5 years when I'm still scheduling contractors instead of running companies." Daniel nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Those are valid questions." "You're not worried? About what? About me leaving?" "Victoria, if you want to leave, you should leave. I'm not going to guilt you into staying somewhere you don't want to be." "That's not what I said. I said I'm questioning things." "So question them. Take the meeting if you want. Figure out what you actually want instead of just reacting to what's in front of you." His calm acceptance somehow made Victoria more agitated. "Aren't you even a little bit worried about losing me?" "Of course I'm worried, but I'm more worried about you resenting me in a year because you chose me over your career." He leaned forward. "Victoria, I love you, and Lily loves you, but we'll survive if you decide this isn't the life you want. We did fine before you showed up. We'd figure it out again." "That's supposed to make me feel better?" "It's supposed to give you permission to make the choice that's right for you, not the choice you think you're supposed to make." Victoria stared at him, frustrated and touched in equal measure. "I hate when you're reasonable," she muttered. "I know." Daniel stood and kissed the top of her head. "Take the meeting, see what they're offering. Worst case, you get a free trip to Seattle and confirm you made the right choice. Best case, you find out you made a mistake and correct it before it's too late." After he left, Victoria sat alone in the office for a long time, staring at Robert Chen's number in her phone. She called him back that afternoon and agreed to fly to Seattle the following week. The next few days were strange. Victoria threw herself into work, trying not to think about the upcoming meeting or what it might mean. Daniel was supportive but distant, giving her space to process. Lily, oblivious to the undercurrents, chattered excitedly about her upcoming spring break. On Thursday evening, Victoria stopped by Daniel's house after work to find him in the garage working on a custom bookshelf for a client. "Can we talk?" she asked from the doorway. Daniel set down his sander. "Always." "I'm scared," Victoria admitted. "Not about the meeting, about what it means that I'm even considering it." "What do you think it means?" "That maybe I'm not cut out for this life. That maybe I need the corporate world more than I want to admit." Daniel wiped sawdust from his hands and walked over to her. "Or maybe you're just having normal doubts about a major life change. You spent 15 years building a career, Victoria. It's not going to disappear from your system in 4 months. Do you think I should take the job if they offer it?" "I think you should do whatever makes you happy." "That's not an answer." "Yes, it is. It's just not the answer you want." He cupped her face in his hands. "I can't tell you what to do. If I say don't take it, you might resent me. If I say take it, you might think I don't care. This has to be your choice." "What if I make the wrong choice?" "Then you make a different choice later. Nothing's permanent, Victoria, not even career decisions." She kissed him then, desperate and confused and grateful all at once. "I love you," she said against his lips. I know. I love you too. Which is why I'm not going to make this easy by begging you to stay or pushing you to go. You're smart enough to figure out what you want. Victoria flew to Seattle the following Tuesday on a morning flight that left Nashville at 6 a.m. Robert Chen had arranged first-class tickets and a car service from the airport to Apex's headquarters, a gleaming glass tower in the heart of downtown. The interview process was extensive. She met with the CEO, the board of directors, the current VP she'd be replacing, and various department heads. Everyone was impressive, professional, clearly successful at what they did. They showed her the proposed office, corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. They walked her through the expansion project, similar to what she'd been hired to do at Meridian, but with better funding and more realistic timelines. They presented the compensation package, significantly more than she'd made before, with stock options that could be worth millions if the company continued growing. It was everything she'd worked toward for 15 years, handed to her on a silver platter. And sitting in that corner office, looking at the view and the org chart and the strategic plan, Victoria felt absolutely nothing. No excitement, no ambition, no hunger to prove herself or climb higher or achieve more. Just a strange, hollow emptiness where her drive used to be. Robert Chen sat across from her, clearly expecting enthusiasm. "So, what do you think? Is this the kind of opportunity you've been looking for?" Victoria looked at the view again, trying to summon some feeling about it. "It's impressive," she said carefully. "The scope is ambitious, the team seems strong, and the compensation is generous. But I need some time to think about it." Robert's smile tightened slightly. "Of course. These are big decisions. When do you think you'll have an answer? End of the week? Perfect. We're hoping to have someone in place by mid-April, so the timing works out well." They shook hands, Robert walked her to the elevator, and Victoria rode down 40 floors feeling more confused than when she'd arrived. The flight back to Nashville gave her 3 hours to think. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through photos from the last 4 months. There was one of her and Lily covered in baking flour after an ambitious cookie project. One of the entire Hayes home repair team at their weekly lunch, everyone laughing at something Carlos had said. One of her and Daniel on his back porch at sunset, both of them relaxed and happy in a way that felt completely natural. She thought about the corner office in Seattle with its impressive view. Then she thought about the cramped office in Daniel's spare bedroom, with its organized files and color-coded calendar and window that looked out onto his backyard where Lily's swing set stood. The choice suddenly seemed very clear. She texted Daniel when the plane landed. "I'm back. Can I come over?" His response came immediately. "Always. Lily's been asking about you all day." Victoria drove straight to his house, still wearing her interview suit and heels, feeling overdressed and out of place in this neighborhood where people wore jeans and t-shirts. Lily met her at the door with a hug that nearly knocked her over. "You're back. How was Seattle? Did you see the Space Needle? Did it rain? Everyone says it always rains in Seattle." "It was fine, and yes, I saw the Space Needle, and no, it didn't rain." Victoria hugged her back fiercely. "Where's your dad?" "Kitchen, making dinner. He's been weird all day." Daniel was at the stove stirring something that smelled like chili, his back tense in a way that told Victoria he'd heard her arrive. "Hey," she said from the doorway. He turned, and the naked hope in his expression made her chest ache. "Hey yourself, how was the interview?" "Professional, impressive, everything I should want." "Should want?" "Yeah." Victoria kicked off her heels and walked over to him. "They offered me the job. VP of operations, massive salary, stock options, corner office with a view of the water. It's basically perfect." Daniel's expression shuddered slightly. "That's great, really great. Daniel, I mean it. If that's what you want, it's not what I want." The words came out clear and certain. "I thought maybe it would be. I thought seeing it all laid out in front of me would make me remember why I worked so hard for so long. But all I could think about sitting in that office was how much I'd rather be here, arguing with you about estimate templates and listening to Lily explain Jupiter's moons." Daniel set down the spoon very carefully. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. That life, the corporate climbing, the prestige, the endless pressure to be more successful, I'm done with it. I don't want it anymore." "What do you want?" "This, you, Lily, the business. Our weird little family and our small company and our normal, uncomplicated life." She stepped closer to him. I know it's not impressive by corporate standards, but it makes me happy in a way that corner office never could. Daniel pulled her into a kiss that tasted like relief and promise and coming home. When they broke apart, Lily was standing in the doorway grinning. Does this mean you're staying? Yeah, kid, I'm staying. Good, because I already made you a card for your birthday next month, and it would be really awkward if you weren't here. Victoria laughed. Wouldn't want to make it awkward. They ate dinner together, the three of them crowded around the kitchen table, and Victoria felt the last piece of uncertainty dissolve. This was where she belonged, not in a glass tower overlooking Puget Sound, but in this slightly chaotic house with the man who loved her and the kid who'd already claimed her as family. After dinner, after Lily had been tucked into bed, Daniel and Victoria sat on the back porch under the stars. I have something for you, Daniel said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Victoria's heart jumped. Daniel, it's not what you think, not yet anyway. He opened the box to reveal a key. It's to the house. I want you to move in with us. You want me to move in? We're together all the time anyway. You're here more than you're at your apartment. Lily adores you. And frankly, I sleep better when you're here. He took her hand. I know it's a big step, and you should take time to think about it. Yes, Victoria interrupted. Yes? Yes, I'll move in. I don't need time to think about it. Daniel smiled, that slow, warm smile that made Victoria's heart flip. Yeah? Yeah. On one condition. What's that? You let me reorganize your garage. It's been driving me crazy for months. Daniel laughed. Deal. They shook on it, and then they were kissing again, and Victoria thought about how strange life was. 6 months ago, she'd been a CEO with a corner office and an impressive title and absolutely no idea how unhappy she was. Now she was a partner in a small home repair company, living with a contractor and his 8-year-old daughter, and she'd never been more content. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Victoria gave notice on her apartment and started moving her things into Daniel's house. Lily helped with manic enthusiasm, claiming this meant they were basically a real family now. Hayes Home Repair continued to grow in small, manageable ways. They took on a major kitchen renovation that showcased their skills and led to 3 more referrals. Miguel brought his nephew on as an apprentice. Jessica started a social media presence that attracted younger clients. And through it all, Victoria discovered that she was genuinely good at this smaller-scale work. The strategic thinking that had served her in corporate boardrooms translated surprisingly well to managing a team of 5 and juggling multiple renovation projects. But more importantly, she could see the impact of her work. When they finished a bathroom renovation, she got to see the homeowner's face light up. When they helped an elderly couple repair their deck so they could safely use it again, she heard their gratitude directly. It was real in a way that quarterly reports and shareholder presentations had never been. Spring gave way to early summer, and one evening in mid-May, Daniel asked Victoria to meet him at the junction. Why? She asked suspiciously. We eat there all the time. Just trust me, 7 o'clock, wear something nice. And Victoria arrived at exactly 7, wearing a simple blue dress that she'd bought specifically for the occasion, nothing torn this time, though the memory of that first night made her smile. The restaurant looked exactly the same. The same hostess greeted her. The same warm atmosphere welcomed her in. But there was something different about the energy, something that made Victoria's heart beat faster. Daniel was already there, sitting at the same table by the window where they'd had their blind date 8 months ago. He stood when he saw her, and the look on his face made Victoria's breath catch. Hi, she said, suddenly nervous. Hi yourself. He pulled out her chair. Remember this place? How could I forget? This is where I showed up in a torn dress, and you gave me your shirt. And where I realized you were the strongest woman I'd ever met. Victoria sat down, her hands shaking slightly. Daniel, what's going on? Just indulge me for a minute. He reached across the table and took her hands. 8 months ago, you walked into this restaurant embarrassed and defensive and trying so hard to hold yourself together, and you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I was a disaster. You were real and honest and willing to show up even when everything was falling apart. He squeezed her hands. Over the past 8 months, I've watched you transform your entire life. You walked away from a career most people would kill for. You took a chance on my chaotic business. You moved in with me and Lily and became part of our family without any guarantees about where we were heading. Daniel, I'm not done. He smiled slightly. You made my business sustainable. You made my life better. You made Lily happier than I've seen her since her mother left. And you did it all while figuring out who you really are, separate from the corporate identity you'd built. Tears were starting to blur Victoria's vision. Victoria Hale, I love you. And I want to spend the rest of my life building things with you. Not just businesses, but a real life together, a family, a future. He stood up and knelt beside the table, pulling a small box from his pocket. The restaurant fell silent, other diners turning to watch. Will you marry me? Victoria couldn't speak through the tears, could barely see the ring through the blur, but she managed to nod. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Of course, yes. The restaurant erupted in applause as Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger. A simple band with a small diamond, nothing ostentatious, perfectly suited to the life they were building. He kissed her while people cheered, and Victoria tasted salt from her own tears mixed with laughter. When they finally sat back down, Daniel pulled out another small box. One more thing, he said, opening it to reveal the red and black flannel shirt from their first date, carefully folded. I had it framed. Figured we could hang it somewhere in the house as a reminder of where we started. Victoria laughed through her tears. You kept it? Of course I kept it. It's part of our story. And beneath the flannel shirt was something else. A new blue dress, identical to the one Victoria had torn on their blind date. Figured you might want a replacement, Daniel said. One without the damage. Victoria held the dress, looking at Daniel through tear-blurred eyes, and felt her heart overflow with an emotion she couldn't quite name. I love you, she said. So much it terrifies me. Good. Terror means you're paying attention. They stayed at the junction for hours, calling Lily to tell her the news and listening to her scream with excitement through the phone. They called Marcus and Sarah, who claimed they'd known this was coming for months. They sat at that table by the window and talked about wedding plans and the future, and all the things they wanted to build together. And when they finally left, walking hand in hand to Daniel's truck, Victoria looked down at the turquoise bracelet still on her wrist, the one he'd bought her at the fall festival, and the new engagement ring beside it. She thought about the Victoria who'd walked into this restaurant 8 months ago, the CEO who'd been so sure of her career trajectory, so confident in her corporate identity, so convinced that success meant climbing higher and earning more. That Victoria had been lost and exhausted and dying inside without even realizing it. This Victoria, the one wearing a simple dress and walking to a beat-up pickup truck with a contractor who made her laugh, was happier than she'd ever imagined possible. They drove back to the house where Lily was waiting with Marcus and Sarah, who'd come over to celebrate. Lily launched herself at Victoria the moment they walked in, already planning the wedding down to the smallest detail. Can I be the flower girl, please? I promise I'll be really good at it. I've been practicing walking slowly. Of course you can be the flower girl, Victoria said, hugging her tight. And can we have purple flowers? Because purple is the best color? Lavender, Victoria corrected with a smile. There's a difference. That's what I said. They celebrated late into the night, toasting with champagne and telling stories about how Daniel and Victoria had met. Lily insisted on hearing the blind date story 3 times. Delighting in every detail. And you really gave her your shirt? She asked Daniel for the 3rd time. I really did. That's so romantic, like a fairy tale. Fairy tales usually involve princes and castles, Marcus observed, not contractors and torn dresses. Same thing, Lily declared. Dad's basically a prince. He fixes things and makes people happy, and he found Victoria when she was sad. Victoria met Daniel's eyes across the room, both of them smiling at Lily's interpretation. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was a fairy tale after all, just a different kind than the stories usually told. One where the happy ending didn't involve castles or corporate empires, but small houses and family dinners and work that mattered. One where success was measured in laughter and stability and coming home to people who loved you exactly as you were. Later, after everyone had left and Lily had finally been convinced to go to bed, Victoria and Daniel sat on the back porch in the warm May night. You know, Victoria said quietly, 6 months ago, I would have told you this wasn't enough, that a small life with a small business couldn't possibly be fulfilling. And now? Now I think maybe I had it backwards. Maybe the small life is actually the big one. She leaned her head on his shoulder. All those corporate achievements I was so proud of. I can barely remember most of them, but I'll remember Lily's face when we finished her bookshelf. I'll remember Mrs. Patterson hugging us after we fixed her ceiling. I'll remember the day Carlos brought his daughter to the office and she told him she was proud of him. Daniel kissed the top of her head. Those are the things that matter. Yeah, they are. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching fireflies appear in the backyard, listening to the night sounds of the neighborhood. When should we get married? Daniel asked eventually. I don't know. When do you want to? Tomorrow? Victoria laughed. Lily would kill us if we didn't give her time to plan the perfect flower girl outfit. Fair point. How about this fall? October, maybe. October sounds perfect. They started making plans right there on the porch, talking about small weddings and backyard receptions, and how to incorporate Lily into the ceremony without overwhelming her. Simple plans for a simple wedding, celebrating the small, imperfect, beautiful life they were building together. The months between May and October flew by in a blur of wedding preparation and business growth and family moments that Victoria treasured more than any corporate achievement. Hayes Home Repair took on their biggest project yet, a full home renovation in Green Hills that showcased everything they'd learned about project management and client relations. The finished product was featured in a local magazine, bringing even more business their way. Victoria and Daniel found a rhythm as partners, both in business and in life. They divided responsibilities based on strengths, trusted each other's judgment, and built something neither could have created alone. And Lily thrived, secure in the knowledge that her little family was becoming permanent. The wedding took place on a perfect October afternoon in Marcus and Sarah's backyard, which they decorated with string lights and fall flowers. It was small, just close friends and family, but it was theirs. Lily took her flower girl duties seriously, walking down the makeshift aisle with perfect poise before breaking into a grin and waving at everyone. Miguel and Carlos stood with Daniel as groomsmen. Sarah was Victoria's maid of honor, having become one of her closest friends over the past year. And when Daniel and Victoria exchanged vows in front of the people who mattered most, Victoria felt something settle into place deep in her chest. This was it. This was the life she was meant to have. Not corner offices and corporate titles and endless climbing towards some nebulous definition of success. But this, partnership with someone who challenged and supported her in equal measure. A daughter who'd claimed her as family without hesitation. Work that mattered to real people. A community that felt like home. At the reception, after the food and the dancing and the toasts, Daniel pulled Victoria aside. I have something for you, he said, leading her to where a large wrapped package waited. What is this? Wedding present. Open it. Victoria tore off of the wrapping to reveal the framed flannel shirt from their first date, professionally mounted with a small plaque that read, Where We Started, The Junction, September 15th. Daniel, she whispered, tears threatening again. Figured we could hang it in our bedroom. Reminder that the best things start imperfectly. Victoria kissed him, not caring who was watching, pouring everything she felt into the contact. I love you, she said against his lips. Thank you for saving me. You saved yourself. I just gave you a shirt. The celebration continued late into the night, and when it was finally over and they'd driven Lily home and tucked her into bed, Victoria stood in the bedroom she now officially shared with Daniel and looked at the flannel shirt hanging on the wall. She thought about the woman who'd walked into the junction 8 months ago, torn dress and defensive walls and corporate identity crumbling. That woman had been terrified of failure, convinced that her career defined her worth, unable to imagine a life that looked different from the one she'd meticulously planned. This woman, Mrs. Victoria Hayes now, knew better. She knew that failure was sometimes just redirection toward something better. That identity came from who you were, not what you did. That plans were less important than staying open to unexpected possibilities. And that sometimes the greatest success came from having the courage to walk away from everything you thought you wanted and build something completely different. Daniel came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. How different my life looks now. How impossible this would have seemed a year ago. Regrets? Victoria turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd offered her a flannel shirt and ended up giving her everything. Not a single one, she said. And she meant it with every fiber of her being. Their story hadn't started with perfection. It had started with a torn dress and an act of simple kindness, and two people willing to show up when life felt messy. But that imperfect beginning had built something stronger than either of them had expected. A partnership. A family. A life worth living. And in the end, that was the only success that really mattered.